All right. There it is. It's on.
Wow, that's tough to get rid of because I've developed Achilles tendonitis along. Yeah. Keep it stretched out. You can pick up something like a little golf ball or something with your toes. That's one of those exercises I can really do when I have that. It's tough.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the January 13th meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. At 4 p.m. today, the board conducted a work session to discuss the draft budget and school allocation standards for fiscal year 2014-15. Please join us for our traditional moment of silence. Thank you. At this point, we're going to turn the program over to our student ambassadors. Dr. Harkins, if you want to describe, or you don't have to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexis Ming, and I attend DuPont Manual High School in District 1. Thank you, board members, for your strong and thoughtful leadership, your guidance during important, challenging, and essential conversations, your deep, wide-ranging knowledge, and your dedication to the success of students like me. Students like me know we have your unwavering support, expertise, and passion on our side. What obstacle dare stand in our way?
Hello, my name is Michaela French, and I attend Atherton High School in District 2. Thank you, board members, for your dedication and innovation in our schools, your insightful questions, your honesty, and your refusal to settle for the status quo. JCPS benefits from your insistence on education that provides the 21st century skills necessary for students like me to engineer our own paths in life.
Hi, my name is Maddie Graham. I attend the J. Graham Brown School, and I'm representing District 3. Thank you, board members, for always remembering to make high-level issues understandable for those they affect, for your dedication to ensuring the community is well-informed about policy and rationale, for standing up for our district and its students, even in trying times, for fearlessly making the decisions that put students first. You show students like me that we are important and our education is worth defending.
Hello, my name is Andy Thoy, and from Wagner High School, and I am representing District 4. Thank you, board members, for your commitment to discover how each policy will impact students and families. Your support of bold new strategies where traditional fixes have failed. Your responsiveness to questions and concerns students can achieve in the right environment. Concern for all community members and your firm belief that all students can achieve in the right environment. Students like me will realize our dreams because of you ensured we had the tools and support to do it.
Hello, my name is Haley McGeorge, and I attend Fairdale High School in District 5. Thank you, board members, for your dedication to ensuring that JCPS is taking thoughtful steps as we move forward in ensuring the district changes for better, not just for the sake of change. For frequently visiting our schools to meet the students and educators you impact. for keeping each of them in mind each time you make a decision. When students like me see you in our hallways, we know there are people who believe in us and fighting for our future.
My name is Laura Will, and I attend Louisville Male High School in District 6. Thank you, board members, for guiding JCPS through some of its most difficult, challenging times, for serving as a rock for children and educators to cling to when the waves of dissent break upon our district, for ensuring even the youngest students have access to learning, for devoting yourself to advocating for children. The success of students like me is due in no small part to your service and the way you are shaping JCPS.
Hello, my name is Anissa Coulter, and I attend Fern Creek High School in District 7. We just want to thank you, board members, for being the voice for every stakeholder in our community and for viewing decisions throughout the lens of a parent and understanding the plight of our educators, for focusing on the educational innovations that will allow students like me to thrive. Parents, students, and community members are inspired by your fresh approaches and dedication to achievement for all students.
If there are any parents here with the students, if you want to stand and be recognized. Thank you for allowing your students to serve. And the students are from the Superintendent's Advisory Council, so we meet regularly so we can stay in touch with the voice of students and what matters to students. So thank you so much for your time and for recognizing our board on the Board Month, the national recognition of board members. So thank you.
At this point, I'm supposed to say that the students are dismissed to go home and work on homework. And they laughed when we said that upstairs, so they're going to laugh again. But thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate all that you do for us. You are the center of our universe, so thank you so much. At this time, Board Member Brady will read our vision statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very nice to be able to do this at the very first meeting of the year. JCPS's vision statement is that all JCPS students graduate prepared to reach their full potential and contribute to our society throughout life.
Thank you. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda this evening is the organization of the board, the election of the chairperson. Is there a motion? Mr. Brady?
I motion that Diane Porter remain chair of the Jefferson County Board of Education.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Jones? All those in favor? Motion is unanimous. Thank you very much. Is there a motion for the election of vice chair of the board? Mr. Hadaway?
I motion that David Jones Jr. Be our vice chair.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Brady? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate Board Member Jones for moving up to Vice Chair, but I would also like to thank Board Member Haddad for the service that she provided for us for the 2013 school year. So thank you so much for your service. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the December 9th, 2013? Ms. Westland, second. I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a recommendation to amend the minutes just for a moment.
Okay.
I'd like to. There's one thing I'd like to add within that, and I would like the minutes to reflect the reason why I voted no on the Frost proposal, which wasn't really specified within the minutes. And what I'd like to specifically say is that, for the record, I'd like to reflect the reason I voted no on the Frost proposal was due to concerns about the health and safety of our students and staff. Specifically, continuing to have students attend a school that lies within an area of non-attainment of air quality standards as required by the EPA, and Frost's proximity to a coal ash pond that is deemed high risk also by the EPA.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the minutes with those corrections? I think Ms. Westland, second. Mr. Brady, all those in favor of accepting the minutes with the correction? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We've done our recognitions and resolutions, so we'll move on to the consent calendar, the superintendent's report. Dr. Harkins.
Thank you, Chair Porter and members of the board. It's my pleasure to call to your attention a few items of special interest. Let me begin by adding my appreciation, along with the appreciation of the students, for the service of each of the 7 members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. It is an honor to work with you. Thank you for your commitment to our students. As we begin a new calendar year, it is a great opportunity to reflect and focus our efforts. We know that there is strength in staying aligned and focused. So our priority continues to be a commitment to improving internal and external communications. On Wednesday, principals and the central office administrators who serve our schools will be discussing important ways to move our district forward. Principals and divisions will provide each other feedback on how to improve the district. We will discuss the impact of professional learning communities and how we will provide our students equal access to every opportunity. We will be discussing how the professional growth and effectiveness system will help us truly support our employees. And finally, how the expenditure of every dollar needs to align with our priorities. We will be recognizing our aligned community partnerships, in this case the Kentucky Science Center and UPS, the United Parcel Service. Last Thursday morning, the 15th District PTA Clothing Assistance Program volunteers opened up the doors to approximately 3 to 5 inches of water. A pipe burst possibly the day before in the Central High School football locker room. Thousands of coats, pants, shirts, sweatshirts, shoes, socks were covered in water. Quickly, JCPS maintenance workers were on the scene to vacuum up the water. A special thanks to all the volunteers who assisted in the CAP program cleanup, and to Sam Corbett with Sam Myers, and to Ann Nash with Highland Cleaners, who assisted in the effort of washing and drying the coats and clothes. And I also want to recognize Dewey Hensley, along with Sam Corbett, actually loading the truck. And actually, I want to do a shout out to Cameron from Coleridge Taylor. On Saturday, a group of volunteers were at the Clothing Assistance Program to hang up the clothes as they came back from the cleaners. And Cameron was right there with us, assisting us every step of the way. So I appreciate Cameron from Coleridge Taylor. I look forward to the work ahead in 2014, setting budget priorities and looking to create integrated plans and systems that move us toward the vision of all students graduating prepared. We have received 82 letters of intent to submit applications for the School of Innovation Design Competition. That far surpassed our expectations. The design review panel will determine finalists in late February and early March, with board approval in June. There's lots to be thankful in 2013, lots to do in 2014. Chair Porter, at this time, I recommend the consent calendar for the board's consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Hargens. Are there any items on the consent calendar that need further discussion? Mr. Brady?
I'd like to discuss item F.1, G.3, G.4, and item AA.
Okay. Ms. Duncan?
I'd like to bring down P and U and V, and I also want to say something about double A.
P is in Paul, Ms.
Right,
Duncan?
right.
U, and did you say V?
V.
Okay, and you wanted to say something about double A also?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Westland?
VT and V, I think we already pulled down Z, but my interest is Z3. Z3, VZ3 and VT.
Okay, are there other items? I think I have this correct, but if I don't, just correct me as we go along the way. The first item to be pulled down was item F1, which is the roof replacement at Frost Middle School. Mr. Brady?
I would just like to vote on this separately.
Okay. The next item is G3, the outdoor classroom pavilion at Stouffer Elementary. Mr. Brady?
Yes, I'd like to discuss this item just a little bit and ask the superintendent or the operations chief of operations about this item. This is regarding the outdoor classroom at Stouffer Elementary, and I just had a real quick issue as to whether or not the issue with the storage had been resolved. There was a discussion, I believe, with the principal regarding storage being done under the benches as a place to be able to store classroom materials or anything along those lines. And I thought there was a disagreement with the vendor, and I just want to see if that has been resolved.
I'll have to check into that.
All
I
right.
believe that benches were originally in the plan when it was estimated to be around $125,000. As part of reducing it down to the $83,000 cost that it was, benches were not part of the original
It's
plan.
benches. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
not the storage. It's benches.
Yes.
Okay. And in regards to that, I had a number of issues with the cleanup of this particular project, as you well know, and I'm wondering to know are we in the process of doing business with this vendor again?
We would probably have to recommend very strongly not to do business with this vendor again.
And
I mean, they would have the right to bid, but one of our things is the past history that we've had.
And I would completely agree with that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, Mr. Brady, is 2011-12 asbestos and lead abatement maintenance contract at various schools.
I'd like to know at the various schools that this asbestos removal has been done, if J-Town was in consideration for that, or if this or some fundings might go to that. J-Town's had an ongoing issue, or did have an ongoing issue with their Marine Corps JROTC firing range there, and to the point where they had to get donors and basically boosters for that JROTC group to foot the bill to clean up this area, which was actually an inactive gun range. We really don't use it for that any longer, and to be able to have that as an indoor drill space. And I was wondering if that was in consideration, or we considered that in regards to that, or at least maybe reimbursing to at least some degree those parent boosters of that program, because that's a fairly good, very well run, organized, and I would say a great program for those students there.
I don't believe this was part of that. I'm going to have to go back and look at my records about the J-Town firing range. I know that there was some things done there, but I can follow up with you on that.
Okay, and if that wasn't a part of it, I'd like for us to consider that.
Sure.
Because in my view, it's really unfair that we have put off something that we had agreed to, then circumstances didn't allow for whatever reason, and the budget wasn't there, but we had agreed to it at one point, for them to be able to take on that responsibility and take those funds that they could have applied to other activities of that group to be able to clean up, a facility issue.
Yeah, I can follow up with you on that.
Great, thank you.
Well, and Dr. Razor, this looks like the contract completions in BG4 forms, so what Mr. Brady's talking about would need to be considered anyway for the next contract,
that'll be
because these
fine.
are completions.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, the next item I have is item P, which is the acceptance of funding from the Jefferson County Public Education Foundation, and that's Ms. Duncan. And Ms. Duncan, let me quickly say that I don't follow my own directions, so we do have 2 speakers that we will let speak before we vote on the consent calendar. I do apologize. We'll get to you very soon. Ms. Duncan, item P.
Well, I just want to recognize, the sustained support that Farnsley Middle and Cane Run Elementary have received from Advanced Materials Incorporated and Xeon Chemicals. Tonight, we're accepting a $20,000 grant from both organizations, $10,000 going to the elementary school and $10,000 going to Farnsley Middle. And just want to publicly recognize how valuable their support is to the schools and to the kids in our district. So just wanted to do that.
Okay, thank you. The next item is T, approval of agreement with International Baccalaureate for Highland Middle School. Ms. Westland?
Yeah, I just wanted to call this out. This is Highland Middle, Mr. Jones being accepted in your district to be an International Baccalaureate middle school, which is good. We have the Atherton program already well underway, and my daughter went through that. And remind me where we are on Young, on IB. Dr. Hargens, or...
Actually, Young has started. Have they been approved, Dr. Hensley, as an IB school? They've gone through a review process.
They have.
I believe they have.
So we don't. We talk about it some, but I think we can talk about it more. How we now have a system, International Baccalaureate system, from elementary, middle, and high, and that's a rigorous program, a internationally proven, excellent academic program, and a real option for students. And those magnets are something that helps us with their diversity. And it gets lots of kids excited about school, and it's very rigorous. I can attest to that. So I wanted to call that out and congratulate Highland, and hope that we can talk more about our International Baccalaureate options in JCPS.
And Principal Minyard at Young actually was one of our presenters at a summit talking about the results that Young is getting. So
yeah, like I said,
thank you for mentioning
we need express buses to Young. People will go in groups to those schools, and just like Brandeis, I think that's a really good option.
Okay. Item U, approval of agreement for Project Lead the Way program. Ms. Duncan.
Well, I don't remember whether I received a response on this or not, so I may have, but Project Lead the Way has a participation fee of $6,100, but I don't think we got the complete cost of that program. And I'm just curious about what the total cost is, because it also includes core training feature and an update training. And I know those things also have a cost to them, but I didn't see it in there, what that cost would be. So if anybody has information regarding Project Lead the Way and what the total cost is when you sponsor this program at one of our schools.
Yes, Project Lead the Way gives us a real hands up with the engineering programs and the medical programs. Much of I think it's an adjusted kind of cost that's individualized for the schools that are involved. I will pull up the exact numbers and send those to you very soon.
All right, thank you. I knew $6,100 is just a participation fee, and then I don't know what that.
There's some things involved with stipends and some other things that depends on how many people are involved at the school.
No, I think we all would appreciate just the total cost of what that is, and thank you. I appreciate it, doing.
Okay, item V, approval of a memorandum of understanding with Jefferson Community and Technical College. Ms. Duncan?
Yes, this is an agreement that we have concerning our GED enrollment in post-secondary school. And I was just curious about what part JCPS plays in this, because the GED program is separate from what we do with our Common Core curriculum. And so how is it that we have an impact on getting GED students prepared for college I know this. That's a goal that we have. We want to increase the enrollment in college of GED graduates, but I just, what do we do? What are we doing to help them?
Well, it's really, in some ways, an adult education issue. What we're trying to do is, through adult ed, prepare those people and really just create a pipeline for them with that option to go to JCTC. And a lot of that work is actually done by JCTC for them to come in and be a part of the program there. Now, technically, with the GED program, if a student is able to pass the GED and many of the skills that we provide them, and many would argue that actually the Common Core curriculum that we put in place is much more rigorous than the GED. If the students are going through our curriculum, they should be able to pass the GED and have some of those skills that'll make them successful as freshmen.
Well, I just know I used to teach GED at night, and many of the people that I taught did not have very strong academic backgrounds and had left school. So many of them had left school, and they were older. You know, they weren't 17, 18, 19-year-olds. I taught a lot of 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds. So,
I think that JCTC is doing an excellent job of trying to bring in non-traditional students like that to try to build those pipelines, and it's kind of a continuation with what we're already doing with them at a lot of our schools, where there's the early college program, there's other dual credit programs and certification programs that go directly to JCTC.
See, that's what I just didn't understand. What part? It's a memorandum of understanding between us and JCTC, but I wasn't sure what we did.
Yeah,
it's our adult ed.
Right. Really, it's our work with adult ed that JCTC and us we just have a communication pipeline to try to help guide those non-traditional students through our adult ed program there.
Okay, I know that's a goal that we have. It's not a part of our accountability model or anything like that, but we did set some goals, I know, and want to try and increase that path. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is item Z, board policies 3, revisions to board policies, powers and duties, Board of Education, curriculum and instruction, and students. Ms. Westland.
Am I the first one on that one? Did anybody else have Z? Okay. My question, and maybe just a comment, no, I guess I'd like to get a comment from Dr. Hargens about it, is VZ3, and the particular policy is 9.438, Student Discipline Code. And I don't know if it's not fair if you have to call that up. It takes just a minute. It's under 3. And it's simply the part about chairing the Student Discipline Code Committee, changing from Director of Pupil Personnel to the Superintendent Designee. And the only reason why I call that up is because the issue of discipline and what we're allowing schools to do and what's in the Code of Conduct and how we're following that has become of more interest to me this year because of reports from schools and families about discipline at schools. And in anything we're doing to change the committee or change our focus, I guess I want to understand before we do it. I know this is just a first reading, so it's not like I'm going to vote against it, but it's my understanding that Director of Pupil Personnel is in the academic division. Is that right? And I don't know if you had planned to change naming somebody else a different division. To me, discipline is something that we should have definitely academic involvement in, because it's people who teach who have to use the discipline or be empowered by the code and what they can do. And I just want to make sure that you have that in mind to keep that together. I hear that there may be changes in the discipline code. I know we just passed it a few months ago, right? And so we've got 2 more years, but I'm concerned about discipline and the change from whether we're doing zero tolerance or restorative practice. I just don't quite know where we're going. And if this chairing this committee would change that, I want to understand what this is part of.
Well, and actually what the change does is just allow maximum flexibility about who would serve in the role of chairing and facilitating the work. The committee, as Ms. Duncan knows because she served on it, incorporates a lot of people. including teachers and principals and people from all the divisions. So the chair simply facilitates the work. So to mirror other policies, it's usually the superintendent designee, so you allow the maximum flexibility. But the director of pupil personnel would still be involved, academic services would still be involved. The committee actually wouldn't change. And I would just point to, so it could be the same person, it could be somebody else. But on January 27th, we're going to do for you a report on safety, discipline, suspensions, and offenses. And then the following meeting, I believe, we're going to do an update on the Office of Civil Rights report or issue that's been brought to our attention so that everybody understands what the issues are. The committee won't be facilitated without the board knowing about it, certainly, and what the goals are. And remember, you approve the code of conduct. The committee does not approve the code of conduct, and the chair certainly, whoever facilitates the work, doesn't have the decision-making power. You have the decision-making power. So it really is, again, to provide the superintendent maximum flexibility to put the right person in the role of simply facilitating the work.
Well, I appreciate that, and I just wanted to raise it because I'm very interested in making sure we fully vet this issue and that we help principals and schools deal with these issues so they can have well-running schools and kids learning.
Is that something,
Ms. Duncan?
is that something that we can take back to committee and then have a further conversation about it a little bit before we bring it back?
Well, it's actually what you would be doing is approving it first reading, and then you could discuss it before you bring it back for second reading if you wanted to alter it for second reading. Okay. So you certainly could do that.
All right. Very good.
The next item is item AA, 2013-14 Telecommunication Devices Policy Waivers for More Traditional DOS in Pleasure Ridge Park High School. Mr. Brady.
Yes, I have a concern about allowing more schools to have a waiver to this particular policy simply because it's been about 4 months since we gave their waiver to the original, I believe, 8 schools at the time. And my understanding was that that was supposed to be a pilot program, at which time the administration was supposed to report back to us with some type of post-implementation analysis before we approve further waivers. And one of the reasons I have that point of view is when looking at the minutes from the that first September meeting, one of the items in here was said that this will be a 1-year pilot and we'll bring back regular feedback to share with board to track progress. Now, to date, we've had one demonstration from a group of students from Wagner, but that really wasn't a report. And I've got ongoing concerns about this regarding infrastructure, regarding access within the school, bandwidth within our internet lines. We did have, I know this, one of these waivers was supposed to be presented at our last board meeting before the end of the year last year. And during that, I believe that at least initial documentation, there was a report talking about internet bandwidth for all of our schools, and some of our schools have lacking sufficient bandwidth. So this is a little bit more of a concern, and that's just the infrastructure side. I have other concerns regarding how these items are being taught within the classroom, whether or not we have adequate professional development, if these things are going to be discussed within our professional learning communities, how different devices that are brought into the classroom are handled within there, especially even older devices. And I know I'm getting way too technical for you, but one of the concerns that I've actually had have is, let's say, for example, a student brings in an iPhone 3GS, and that particular iPhone will not be able to be upgraded to the newest version of iOS for that particular device. Well, if that student has that device and doesn't have, let's say, Edmodo installed on that, but the teacher in a particular classroom says, okay, let's all install Edmodo. The App Store will only have the latest, greatest version of Edmodo that is supported by iOS 7, but will not run on this device, meaning that student will not be able to get that particular application. Now, I know that's just one scenario, but it's things like that I would like to find more to get some feedback from not just our educators that are in the classroom, but also from our IT department, and actually do a real analysis before we kind of open this up. Now, bring your own device policy, I believe, is a stopgap measure. I think ultimately we should be providing that device, and I think in the future we will. Of course, funding is a huge, major obstacle to that. But in particular, I just want to make sure that we have a coherent strategy and plan for being able to look at these devices and how they're really effectively utilized within the classroom. And quite frankly, I haven't had any real data to be able to say whether or not this is a program that should be rolled out to everyone, or we're just going to open it up wild, wild west and let everyone do what they want to do. I feel from a consistency standpoint, because we have a large group of students who are very mobile and go from one high school to another, or even to other schools if we decide to free this up for middle schools as well, which eventually we will. I have a concern about consistency across classrooms, across facilities. So if one student goes to another facility, then they're going to have to relearn an entirely different set of applications just to be able to support what's going on within the classroom.
Well, and as I remember the conversation when the original waivers were approved, is the conversation did revolve around what if more schools wanted to do it? Would we really make them wait if they wanted to do it? And I thought what we ended with was, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. And the bridge came when the first school came forward, and then 2 other schools wanted to also come on to that, requesting the waiver. And I think what we have to remember is that this is coming from within the school, that you have to have teacher support to actually bring the waiver forward. So we're not saying we think these particular schools should do it. It's actually the teachers and the staff that are saying we want to try it. Now, what I agree with Mr. Brady that we didn't have, except we had a great demonstration, we didn't have a lot of data around the impact, but what we also didn't have is any reports of escalation of instances where it was a disruption, that the teachers are handling it and the schools are handling it in a way that manages it. So I think the decision comes with, do you sort of learn as you go and allow people the opportunity to try it, or do you wait until it's figured out? So, but that's what I recall about the discussion.
Yeah, and I would like to take full responsibility for that misinterpretation of how the board meeting had ended. What I did was look at the integrity of the applications I received and check the bandwidth to make sure that everything was okay, and all those schools met the criteria, had very well-reasoned plans, a clear professional development plan. They knew what they were doing, so I added them to the list. A lot of the information we're receiving and a lot of the survey data and everything we're receiving is extremely positive. And I think that led me to just maybe be a little more laxed on that acceptance of those applications or those proposals when I received them. So I take full responsibility for moving that forward the way that I did. I still believe that there's a great deal of promise in this, and I think these schools have the ability to do this extremely well, like the previous round of schools seem to be doing it. But you're right, until the data comes out, until we get a conclusion to the study of this, we don't know for sure. And I promise you that we will continue to study it with an open mind and real rigor toward what their plans told us they would be able to do.
Okay. So just to be clear, I was fairly clear during that meeting because it is a very important issue for me. I'm involved in the technology field. It's part of my vocation. But part of any type of project implementation is part of that is an implementation, and especially a post-go live analysis.
Yeah, certainly.
You have to be able to do adequate, for lack of a better term, post-mortem, as they refer to it in our industry. But you have to be able to do an adequate analysis to find out what went right, what went wrong, and what are best practices moving forward. We're not doing that. And this, to me, is an indication of a fundamental misunderstanding of how IT should be implemented within our district. I know that we're going to be coming out with an IT strategy and a plan that's going to be presented hopefully sometime in February. I've been looking forward to that plan for quite some time now. I'd like to see some coherence on our policies and our strategies moving forward, and I just feel that has been lacking in many different areas. And this is another example of that, to where I'm not against these schools going forward with this necessarily, but I have great concerns about the way we implement this. We have to do a better job. We have to do some analysis to find out what is working. And I have also concerns, not just from the student standpoint, which is my primary focus, but also from a teacher support standpoint as well, because we're asking teachers to, supply their own apps, research their own apps. And I think that as part of our PLC strategy should be looking at what
how
apps
technology
work.
can support that, certainly.
Yeah, and I think that should be in and of itself its own PLC. So I'm hesitant to vote against this, but I'm certainly not pleased with the way we're rolling it out.
Ms. Haddad and then Ms. Duncan, because Ms. Duncan had pulled it down as well.
I know. I'm not on. I know when we did a few years back, and I don't think you weren't involved in it, when we did that 5-year computer, we gave schools computers. It was a couple schools, and Moore was one of them. The thing we didn't do was what Chris is saying. We didn't follow up, and we spent a lot more money than we thought we were going to, and I think that's the real issue. You're not against schools doing things, but are they being effective? What have you heard from the other schools since that one meeting? I mean, they had a whole semester. What have you heard? I mean, you said you made this decision on what you had heard. It would have been nice for us to see what you have heard and what all these schools are doing, because I know some of the teachers are not doing it. Absolutely
Right,
not.
yeah. And it was optional
but then
for
the kids are using it in the lunchroom, even though they're not doing it in the classroom. So I know that's not total control. Nobody can really control that. But I don't want us to find ourselves spending a lot of money and not knowing where it's going. That we just let them do it. We put things in. The kids and some kids took them home. Some of them didn't bring them back. They were broken. We really have to look at this before we really just jump in.
Right.
And I don't know in this semester if they're ready to do that. I mean, we're going into another semester, and I want to give the schools the opportunity they want, but we have to be sure it really works, and that's what a pilot program does.
Right, and with the pilot schools, we are evaluating them very closely. We have a very clear plan for looking at the achievement levels that occur in those classrooms where kids are utilizing the technology. Most of what I have heard so far has been from teachers and from principals that say, thanks, this is working really well, we like this. When we looked for the previous board meeting where we had a presentation, we had a lot of good options of people we could have brought up that all gave really good feedback and were willing to do examples of ways, model for us how they were using it in the classroom. So I do agree completely that the purpose of a pilot is to look at what the data tells us at the end and use that to inform future decisions. Yeah. I think I was swayed somewhat by the desire and the plans that those schools put forward, the proposals that they put forward. It seemed that they had this under control, that they thought they could utilize this to benefit kids and benefit achievement in their school. Nonetheless, I agree completely. No plan should, no pilot certainly should be expanded until you have the information, the data gathered from the initial group. I think I'd simply misinterpreted the conclusion of that board meeting and then the continuation with the model and the positive feedback we received on that. I think I'll let that kind of put sparkles in my eyes about how we might move that
I would
forward.
like to see the data on how many kids that can afford it are getting it, are not getting it. I mean, in each classroom. You can go classroom by classroom and see how effective it is for the kids who don't have it. Are they able to access it from our computers, or are they just sitting there? Are they sharing?
All of the schools, Yeah, all the schools offered us plans for what they were going to do beyond that. For the kids that didn't have the devices, couldn't bring their own devices, they all had plans. Many of them are using, iPads or using, like Eastern, using other kinds of devices that help the kids get access to those, just like everyone else.
Well, that's what we found, though, with the computer program. The kids that really need it were not getting access. That's what we want to be sure that the
That's
kids
right.
that really need it are having the access. And that was not happening with that program. And
Right.
we found out we were spending a lot of money. It cost us a lot more money than it should have because we didn't really watch it and see how.
Right, and that's very
how it's going.
unfortunate because
Yeah.
we have to have equitable distribution in this
Definitely.
case. All these kids need access to the technology in order to take advantage of it.
Ms. Duncan?
I had the same reservations, especially when we only saw one presentation and we weren't hearing. I mean, I feel like we should be listening to upside, downside things. You know, we need to be hearing what's going right and what's going wrong. The proposals sound school-wide, and yet actually what they are individual teachers who are willing
That's
to
right.
take this on and try this, which, you know, I'm all for encouraging that. But I really do feel like I'd like to assess this a little bit and get a fuller report. You know, we never were informed about how long it took to get all the permission slips in to do this, to have, okay, this is the day we start. We never really found that out. So I don't know how long it takes to get all the schools' permission slips in order to do that. And I mean, to me, that's a critical part of starting that. You have to
Certainly.
have that
Yeah.
commitment
That's
from
right.
the parent and understanding from the parent. Otherwise, you've just got everybody school-wide thinking it's okay to do these things, and I felt very uncomfortable with that. So I'm have the same hesitancy about
I understand.
even going. I just want to let's look more closely at who's doing this now and how this is going, so we can get some full reports.
And we're, included in the plans were processes for how they would get the permission slips and those kinds of things. But you're right, it's the other end of that when it's completed, when we finish the pilot, that we will have a better picture of how effective it was. So that's very fair.
Mr. Hadaway?
Yes, I don't disagree with Board Member Brady. I share some of the same concerns that Board Member Haddad shared, especially with the demographics that are in our schools, and Board Member Duncan. However, for these three schools, it is my understanding, when we did last talk about this, I want to echo what Dr. Hargan said, because I remember Board Member Westland specifically asking for clarity and saying, now are we saying we're allowing other schools to do that, to apply for this waiver? And we did say yes, we were. So I think this is a great opportunity that Mr. Brady has initiated to share these concerns, because they have to happen. But for these three schools, I would hate to be communicating as a board that you can apply for the waiver and then withdraw it. It has nothing to do with the concerns that are raised, because they do need to be addressed, and we do need to know that data that comes back. But for these three schools, I would encourage us to move ahead, as they have got input from their students, they've got input from their teachers and their faculty and staff, whether they can do that.
Other comments? Mr. Brady?
Just want to follow up with one more thing. I've been weighing whether or not, initially when I came in here today, I was not going to vote for this, simply because I think we really need to stick to our guns and have a way of actually making sure that we have some sensible way of that we analyze things. We just have to do a much better job of that. But I'll tell you what, and I want to hear my other colleagues' concerns about this, and it really was my understanding that, and I'm pretty sure that one of the specific things that I said was that this is a pilot program, and after we do analysis, then we'll open it up. And I think I used the term Wild Wild West. We just don't open it up for everyone. But I'm going to vote for this, and this is the reason why. And it's because of Anissa, who I spoke with at our dinner this evening. Because when I was talking to this Fern Creek Junior, who is not in one of these schools who's applying for this, there is an actual shortage of computers in their classrooms right now. And there are times in her classes where the teachers are saying, look, we don't have the resources in this classroom laptops, workstations to be able to this. They use iPads in a few of their classes, but not all of them. They don't have enough iPads to go around, so I have a very huge concern about equity within our schools regarding technology access. That being said, I also think it's better for the kids to have some access within our schools than no access at all. But more than anything is the fact that she said that they don't have adequate access within their classrooms right now, and as a result, then there are some teachers that are bending, to use the term kindly, this policy and allowing their kids or those students to use their digital devices that they already have on them to be able to do research. Now, here's an issue with this. Those kids are not accessing the firewall, which should be one of the main policy issues that within this particular pilot program or expanded pilot program now, because that protects them from unwanted material, not to mention viruses or anything else. But also, those students are accessing that data and pulling all this data down using their own data plans, which means either they're paying for it, which, by the way, happens more often than not, or their parents are paying for it. And they're doing that to be able to access resources that, quite frankly, we should be providing them. So I'm going to vote for this, but just bear that in mind, because this is something that I don't think quite honestly, sometimes I don't know if the administration has a clear picture of.
Ms. Westland?
Just want to say real quick that I think we're going to be better because of your focus on technology and looking at how we roll things out. I am going to vote for this. Of course, I see at least two of the three principals in the back, and I trust them to, you've heard all this, so you've got to tell us exactly how it goes and how well it's going to work. And I know you both have students who are not going to have as much access to technology as others, but you obviously have thought about that, and you know how you're going to work it out, right, Ken and Vicki? You're going to figure that out and bring it back to us. So we'll look forward to that, and I'll support that.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I'll just add my 2 cents. I endorse strongly the desire for thorough review and identification of problems that need central correction. But in an environment where things are changing as quickly as they are, I am 100% in support of devolving the decision to the principals to deal with the conditions at their schools, provided the core issues of bandwidth and the kind of review that you've already said you've done are addressed. I think decentralization with review of performance is the right way to deal in the early stages of figuring out how to deal with this stuff.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hensley.
Thank you.
At this time, I will ask for a motion for the consent calendar except item F1, which is the roof replacement at Frost Middle School. Is there a motion? Mr. Jones, is there a second? Mr. Hadaway? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we need to vote on the consent calendar F1 roof replacement at Frost Middle School. Is there a motion for that? Mr. Hadaway, second. Ms. Haddad, all those in favor? Ms. Haddad, Ms. Duncan, Mr. Hadaway, Ms. Westland, Mr. Jones, and Ms. Porter. And opposed, Mr. Brady. Okay, thank you very much. That completes the consent calendar, and the next item on the agenda we will move to has to deal with action item, and we have speakers at this point. So it has to do with the approval of the 2013 Assessment and Evaluation of School Nutrition and Physical Activity Report. So at this time, Dr. Arno, welcome and thank you for being here. You have 3 minutes. At the end of 2.5, you'll hear a bell, and at the 3 minutes, you'll hear 2 bells. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. And my name is Anita Arno. I also bring greetings from Dr. LaQuandra Nesbitt, who is the Director of Public Health and Wellness. Dr. Hargens, Chairman Porter, and members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to speak regarding the importance of elevating the board's commitment to equity and health for all of our children, regardless of where they live or the school that they attend, through the proactive implementation of evidence-based, aid-competent, coordinated school health model across all Jefferson County public schools. While the presentation that will be presented later this evening will reference all the work that has been occurring in recent months around coordinated school health, my goal this evening is to underscore the urgency with which this needs to happen. Specifically, I recommend that the board consider an appropriate timetable upon which they might move beyond voluntary participation. Currently, we have a little more than accidental opportunities for health across JCPS. The evidence shows that while, for example, the Health Promotion School of Excellence model, a voluntary program, has been in existence for over 2 decades, only a handful of schools, less than 1 in 3, participates. In public health, it is generally considered unconscionable if we know that something works, but we make it only optional or accidental in terms of access. I note also that an evaluation study that dates back to 2008 had recommended that, and I quote, the HBSC program should move towards a more standardized approach to prevent obesity, define more sophisticated metrics for success, and require consistent participation across all schools in a process that works in concert with the coordinated school health program supported by the Centers for Disease Control. I would reiterate that sentiment, and I will leave a copy of that report for your review. In particular, however, given the purely voluntary approach has lacked the necessary urgency required to ensure that all kids have access, the question is now one of equity or lack thereof. That needs to be addressed. The majority of children in JCPS do not benefit under current arrangements, and arguably, the children who need it most are left out of the process. The time has come, therefore, for more affirmed and effective action. We need all, 100% of our children, to have access to these essential health benefits. I cannot emphasize enough that health is critical to academic success while in school, but also to build the foundation, skills, and habits of a lifetime essential to support good health. While I recognize current pressures to ensure learning and improve academic achievement, putting this off to another day would be as if it were a luxury is a false choice. I have little doubt that inequities in opportunities for health across our schools are reinforcing the inequitable academic outcomes that we all are trying to combat, as evidenced by the equity scorecard. Opportunities for linking health to education and core standards also exist with programs such as Health Teacher. I therefore recommend the development of minimum standards across the 8 components of the health domains, and there are other ways in which we can do this. I will also submit this document as well as the one I referenced before. And I would also like to say how much I've appreciated working with my colleagues at JCPS over the last several months. And I appreciate the strength of commitment of both the board, the administrators, and the principals. And we look forward to working with you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arno, for being here and for your presentation. Our next speaker is Ms. Sasha Belinky. Ms. Belinky. Thank you for being here tonight. You will have 3 minutes.
My name is Sasha Belinky, and I'm the Director of Healthy Actions for the YMCA of Greater Louisville, as well as a proud alumna of JCPS. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. Y5210, the program that we're discussing today, is a classroom-based physical activity and healthy eating program developed locally by the YMCA of Greater Louisville. We teach kids to eat 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables each day, to have 2 hours or less of screen time, 1 hour or more of physical activity, and 0 sugar-sweetened beverages. Y5210 was developed to increase physical activity in schools, to promote knowledge around healthy eating and physical activity in school and among families, to promote increased concentration and academic achievement in the classroom, and to give teachers a program that is easy to implement. The Y5210 kit includes in-class student information sheets, take-home challenges that you're getting a copy of right now, and DVDs that provide 10 minutes of guided in-classroom physical activity. Separate kits and curriculum have now been developed for kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th grade, and even an after-school program. Each kit has everything needed to fully run the program, including all copies. And it's one of the things that our teachers really love about the program, no extra time at the copy machine. We make it easy for them to implement the program, and that's why they keep doing it. The pilot program in 2008 was a proven success with participation from 800 students in 9 schools. Today, we have 12,000 elementary school students doing this program within JCPS in 400 classrooms. We are results-oriented, and as such, data has always been an important part of our program. Both student and parent pre- and post surveys are collected to assess knowledge and behavior change as a result of this program. In the 2012-2013 school year, we saw a 5% increase in students who drank absolutely 0 sugar-sweetened beverages. Perhaps the most compelling data we have seen is in the stories from our teachers. A 3rd grade teacher at Watson Lane told us that Y-5 210 builds classroom community and discipline. It teaches kids to control themselves and their behavior. Another 4th grade teacher from Medora told me that some of the best things about Y-5 210 are also the hardest to measure. How do you measure kids that start out having no balance at the beginning of the program and now do? We know that physical activity is closely linked to academic performance, and the literature supports it. A review of programs that encouraged brief physical activity in the classroom by the CDC found that 8 out of 9 had a positive association between physical activity and indicators of academic performance. We have come a long way with this program, and we could not have done it without our partnership with the JCPS Health Promotion Schools of Excellence. We even have an HPSE specialist who does the physical activity on our DVDs. HPSE has allowed us to keep the costs low, the integrity of the program high, and to get this program out to all 12,000 of these students. We're now implementing the program outside of JCPS, and all of our teachers have to go through a competitive application process. We also have this program out in communities across Kentucky, across the nation, that are doing this Y-5 210 kit that was developed here locally.
I don't mean to be rude, but if you could just kind of bring it to closure, I would really appreciate it. And
I'd
so
just
will
like to
my
end by thanking you all for your continued support. JCPS has been absolutely instrumental in this, as has been the Humana Foundation, which has been one of our major funding partners. Thank you so much for your continued support. On behalf of the YMCA of Greater Louisville, I thank you all.
Thank you so much, and we can see your passion, so thank you for being here tonight. So now we will move to action item, the action item about the approval of the 2013-14 assessment and evaluation of school nutrition and physical activity. Dr. Harkins.
And actually, I will turn it over to Bonnie Shiraki.
Dr. Harkins, Chairman Porter, members of the Board of Education, thank you for this opportunity to present the 2013-14 Nutrition and Physical Activity Report. I'm joined by Donna Benton, Practical Living Specialist, Trina Eddington, Assistant Director of School and Community Nutrition Services, and Dr. Beverly Winch, Program Planning and Evaluation Specialist. Good health is necessary for academic success. Like adults at work, students at school have difficulty being successful if they are depressed, tired, bullied, stressed, sick, using alcohol or other drugs, hungry, have difficulty seeing or hearing, and or are abused. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, schools by themselves cannot and should not be expected to address the nation's most serious health and social problems. Families, healthcare workers, the media, religious organizations, community organizations that serve youth, and young people themselves also must be systematically involved. Coordinated school health programs are a solution. True coordinated school health programs consist of 8 components of coordinated school health. They're separate but interconnected components that must be linked to be supportive of one another. Many of these components exist in every school, but they are not often formally linked in a coordinated way. At the district level, we have a coordinated school health team that meets twice a month. Our vision is that all students, families, staff, and community will benefit now and through life from being a part of a coordinated school health program which promotes measurable academic achievement, through a comprehensive approach to student health. Our goal is to use the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Coordinated School Health Framework to address the JCPS core values and Goal 4 of the strategic plan that all schools are safe, resourced, supported, and equipped to support students' needs. We are currently working towards formally merging the District Wellness Committee with this team. The team involves at least one district representative from each of the 8 coordinated school health components and includes community members. We are interconnected and linked to committees such as Louisville Linked, 15th District PTA, the YMCA, the Metro Health Department, and we have a principal advisory group. The Coordinated School Health Committee created various documents to help principals understand and know the local board policies, state laws, and federal laws related to each coordinated school health component. This is the direction we are going in, and therefore our annual report next year will include more areas of health than just nutrition and physical activity. We believe this will paint a better picture for you and how we are working to meet all needs of students related to health. An excellent example of a coordinated school health process right now is Louisville Linked, by linking all needs of students from any of the 8 components to the community resources needed. Another example is the Health Promotion Schools of Excellence program. It has been in existence since 1992 and won various awards. However, we are only in 41 schools currently. The Metro Health Department, along with the Coordinated School Health Committee members and the Principal Advisory Group, see the value in expanding the program across the district to be more effective and intentional towards meeting the health-related needs of students, staff, and families we serve. Of course, this would be voluntary and may be implemented at various levels. New highlights from the Health Promotion Schools of Excellence program related to physical activity and nutrition include our 3-year federal grant findings and our cross-country program. We now do the 1-mile walk-run assessment 4 times per year and are seeing benefits already from that. The assessment is not just to find out if the student meets a standard, but to introduce them to a lifelong physical activity such as walking or running. We also conducted the Y5210 program and have expanded it accordingly. We have 16 cross-country teams this year that are inclusive of any student, not just the athlete. We conduct meets throughout the year with hundreds of parents attending, and parents and staff have reported many benefits besides their child being physically active, including school connectedness. Dr. Winch will now share the Health Promotion Schools of Excellence PEP grant findings and the cross-country data.
Okay. The first set of data that I wanted to share with you is from the PEP grant, and what this shows is changes in the percent of students who are above or equal to the 95th percentile with their body mass index. And so the PEP schools compared to the HPSE schools, you can see from fall to spring there was a reduction of 6% of students who were classified as obese compared to 1% for the HPSE schools, which is still a reduction, but there's a pretty big difference between the 2 groups. And then on the for the walk-run data, what you'll see there is that from fall to spring, the PEP schools, we think because of the 4 assessments and the goal setting and that went along with those assessments, the PEP schools had a greater percent of their kids meet their standard in the spring, while the HPSE schools actually saw a little bit of a decline from fall to spring. In terms of the cross-country data, what you see here is a comparison of cross-country kids to a control group, and these are kids from the same schools as the cross-country kids. And so for the walk-run, what you see is both groups improved from fall to spring, but the cross-country group improved almost 8% more than the control group. And then in terms of overweight or obese students, the control group from fall to spring reduced kids in that category by a little bit over 7%, while the cross-country kids reduced it by 12.3%. So that's a pretty substantial reduction. So now Donna Benton is going to go over the physical activity report for you.
And it's my honor to do that, the physical activity report, and I'm proud that JCPS elementary schools have been very active implementing physical activity. As annually required by Kentucky law, all 90 elementary schools have assessed their physical activity environment, and the results for each area's schools are in your folder. They will be given to the assistant superintendents for their area and also posted online. I'd like to highlight 7 contributing factors of success in the 7 years since the physical activity law went into effect in 2006. First is the Practical Living Program Review, which requires each school to utilize a comprehensive school physical activity program to increase the quality of PE instruction and to increase the physical activity opportunities throughout the school environment. The second is the local SBDM wellness policy, which is required both by Kentucky law and the Practical Living Program Review. Initially, each K-5 school focused on the writing of their wellness policy, and now we're focusing on the implementation, fuller implementation of this wellness policy that must include moderate to vigorous physical activity each day. The third is increasing and improving the total physical activity environment, and we have done extensive faculty trainings and provided resources and equipment for both outdoor and indoor physical activity, as well as numerous before and after school physical activity offerings. Our schools and community partnerships are strong and successful and support the JCPS physical activity environment. Schools itemize these partners in their report. Go Noodle, provided as part of healthteacher.com by 2 community partners, has been a great free addition this year. These brain breaks, which are Common Core aligned, are widely used by elementary classroom teachers and are keeping our students very active. Fifth, there has been an emphasis on getting all students active, and not just the skilled students or the athletes. All students have the capacity to perform some type of physical activity, and we are committed to helping them all be successful in this area. The 6th trend is that success breeds success, and classroom teachers are verifying through their experience what CDC and other studies show, that attention span, classroom behavior and conduct, and achievement test scores are all positively correlated with physical activity. 7th, JCPS is a leader in the physical activity arena, and these recognitions add momentum and motivation. Earlier this year, you as a board honored the 17 JCPS PE teachers who achieved national certification as Director of Physical Activity for their schools. KDE is presently pointing the national spotlight on JCPS for our schools who are active by the Let's Move Active Schools, which is a coalition of national organizations supporting physical activity in schools. And locally, JCPS is presently featured in the Louisville Magazine for our emphasis on physical activity in physical education classes. And moving forward, PE, PLCs, professional learning communities, will provide both sustainability and power the trajectory of the physical activity environment in JCPS. Now, Trina will report on the nutrition environment.
Thank you, Donna. It is my pleasure to update you on the significant programs being implemented by Nutrition Services. First of all, we are very excited about the reception of the Bus Stop Cafe. Children at 2 mobile home communities and several public pools were able to take advantage of summer meals delivered and served where they live and play. Over 10,000, or almost 10% of the summer meals served, were served in the Bus Stop Cafe this summer. The mobile bus was so popular, we are currently pursuing the possibility of an additional Bus Stop Cafe to serve several additional areas that have expressed interest. Through the USDA Child and Adult Care Food Program, we are able to offer supper to students participating in after-school enrichment activities. Supper is currently available in all PLA schools. as well as many other sites where at least 50% of the students enrolled normally qualify for free and reduced meal benefits. As you can see, the number of meals served and sites participating continue to grow. All students participating in after-school activities at these locations can receive a free supper regardless of their eligibility of free or reduced meal benefits. In July of 2012, USDA implemented revised nutrition standards for school lunch. New requirements for school breakfast began to phase in this past July 2013. Based on the most recent recommendations in the Dietary Guidelines for Americans and from the Institute of Medicine, school meals now contain more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, in addition to meeting the age grade group requirements for calories, saturated fat, and sodium. JCPS planned breakfast and lunches to meet or exceed all of the applicable USDA requirements. Thanks to a generous Walmart Foundation grant and support from elementary principals and JCTA, Nutrition Services was able to launch Breakfast in the Classroom in August of 2012. The number of schools adopting Breakfast in the Classroom continues to grow, from the original 19 to the now present 30, and that includes 3 middle schools. In October of 2013, the percent of students eating breakfast in Breakfast in the Classroom schools reached 90%, compared to the 37% at non-participating schools. Dr. Winch will now share the evaluation data from the 2012-13 school year.
Thanks, Trina. One thing I want to point out for everyone to remember, this is data from year 1. So typically when we look at a program in the first year of implementation, we look at implementation and non-cognitive measures more strongly than academic. The first data I want to show you are some non-cognitives, and what you see here that is probably the most striking would be the difference between the Breakfast in the Classroom schools compared to the control group of schools, where suspension went up for both groups, but it went up an average of 2 suspensions per school compared to 0.42 for the Breakfast in the Classroom schools. And that's one of the elements of the Breakfast in the Classroom, is that there's a connection between providing that service and behavior, improvements in behavior. In the next slide, I'll show you the 2013 K-Prep data, and honestly, the data doesn't show much of an impact for Breakfast in the Classroom yet. There's a little bit of an advantage for the GAP data, but overall, they're just pretty much in stride with the control group in the district so far. The other thing that I wanted to show you, because of the potential connection between nutrition and health for the kids, is a comparison of the big schools with nurses and the non-big schools with nurses. And what you see here is that last year we had a decrease of visits to the school nurse office of an average of 41 visits per school, compared to nurse visits to non-big schools, which went up 675 visits per school. So that's a pretty striking difference. And that's the evaluation data.
Thanks, Beth. Dr. Hargens, Chairman Porter, and members of the board, this concludes our annual report, and we will be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Ms. Duncan?
Beverly, I didn't understand that, what you just said on the very last thing on the big school and the non-big school. And that both of them have nurses.
There's 8 Breakfast in the Classroom schools that have full-time school nurses.
Okay.
And of those schools, the visits went down an average of 41 office visits per school, compared to the rest of the schools with school nurses, where office visits went up an average of 675 visits per school.
Okay, those were the ones without Breakfast in the Classroom.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to ask you too, are you all tracking attendance? Because to me, getting kids healthier might be showing up in attendance
Right.
data.
I kind of glossed over that. That is on the slide. Attendance for the big schools and the control set of schools actually declined a little bit. The big schools declined less. So, that's a positive, but they both declined just a tad bit in attendance last year.
Okay, no,
so we are tracking it, yes.
Yeah, that to me would really be a big reinforcer of what we're doing with this. I saw on the paper, and that was a little confusing to me too. I read over the paper that we had, and our coordinated school health program, is that only, the way it sounded from the paper, it sounded like it was really just directed at the 41 HPSE schools. But is
I'll
that
let Bonnie answer that?
If I'm understanding your question, yes, we do have the coordinated school health program here within Health Promotion Schools of Excellence, and there's 41 schools that currently are participating in that program.
But is that the primary customer of the coordinated school health, or is it district-wide? Because I really didn't understand that.
Well, one of the things that we're looking at and working on doing is trying to introduce more schools to coordinated school health, and it might be at different levels. They might come to a training just on coordinated school health and learn about all the 8 components and how the interconnectedness between staff members and family and community involvement from their constituents would help them. And then there might be some schools who would continue on at different levels of implementation of coordinated school health. Some schools might already be doing some coordinated school health components, one of the 8 components already in their school, and focusing on that, but they just may not be focusing on all 8 components and fully implementing the full program.
You mentioned health teacher, and I know that is a program sponsored by Humana. And can you tell us, we heard a little bit about Go Noodle. You could read a little bit about it. But how is health teacher being exposed, or how is that being, how are schools getting access to health teacher? How's that happening?
Healthteacher.com is provided, it's a community partner, it's provided by the Humana Foundation and also Cozier Children's Hospital Foundation. Those two are paying for it. It's a national program, but they're paying for it in Jefferson County. In middle and high, it is offered mainly to health and PE teachers to implement. On an elementary level, we've focused all elementary schools who are interested because there's this incredible Common Core connection. All of their lessons have informational text-dependent questions, and level 2 and 3 vocabularies, which all the ELA classroom teachers need to teach ELA and the Common Core. So as we optionally have exposed all schools to it by talking to the principals about it, offering job-embedded PD, offering professional development, as more and more schools learn about it, they're excited about it and implementing it. And Health Teacher pays for a consultant 20 hours a week who's a former Jefferson County teacher to go work with those schools to implement at the level they wish.
I have heard tremendous things about Go Noodle, and these are wonderful materials available for our schools and our teachers. One final question I had about nutrition. I know they changed the nutrition guidelines. I think most recently they've just changed and tried to increase protein. Are we going to see that anytime soon? Because I've been where we've been trying to implement the present guidelines, and we had to reduce the size of the meat on hamburgers and various things, and I'm just wondering when we will be able to implement the new measurements of the new guidelines they have for this.
It's very possible in the future that could come about. One of the things that keeps our area always interesting, it seems like we have a new regulation that comes out every day or a new guideline that we have to follow. So I could go in tomorrow morning and turn on my computer and there's a new one that says to increase our protein servings. But for right now, with all of the with all of the changes that have come about. I don't look for that in the very near future, but as the American dietary guidelines are changed and enhanced, and the meal pattern tries to follow that, that's definitely a possibility in the future.
I certainly hope so. I know complaints have rolled in from all over the country. I read about that the other day of where kids aren't always fully satisfied with the portions that they're getting right now. And so I hope that everybody is responsive to what they're hearing. It's a long time between 2 o'clock and
Yes.
the end of the day for kids, and it's I just want us to be responsive to it.
That hasn't been really a huge problem for us because every child, when they go through the line in their reimbursable meal, they get an entree, a milk, and up to 4 different fruits and vegetables. And when you're in the schools watching them come through the line, that's a lot of food on the tray. I know that they have had issues in other areas of the country where the kids have even made videos about being hungry because of the new restrictions and the new guidelines, and that has caused USDA to become a little bit more lenient with things like bread servings and that sort of thing. But we have not experienced complaints about that because we are allowing the students to take so many fresh fruit and vegetable choices. So they're definitely getting enough to eat.
Well, they get enough presently, but it's just how long does that last, you know? And
Right.
I know I listen to my own, so I know how how hungry they get. And the fruits and vegetables are there, and they're wonderful. They taste great. They're great, but they don't last very long for them. So.
And that's why I'm really excited about the new supper program that we've made available in several of our schools. I think it's definitely been a huge benefit to our students who are staying for those after-school activities to provide them with that nutrition, to give them that extra push so that when they do get that tutoring or they do get that enrichment, that they have the nourishment to sustain them through that activity, and they're not sitting there with a headache or a stomach ache. So.
Yeah, very good. Thank you all so much.
Ms. Haddad.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you too. The board had an opportunity to get on the bus that you take around, and that is wonderful. I've heard really good things about that. And of course, we've always fed the kids in the summer, but I think this is even more of an opportunity. You all are getting out more. And the physical activity, I love it when I go past the school in my neighborhood and the kids are out playing recess. And we almost had to pull the teeth out of the legislators to allow elementary kids to have recess that wasn't structured. And when you hear them out there and they run around, they get that energy out and ready to go back in. And it's very good for discipline. I asked the teachers about that, and they said it really gets them calmed down. They come back in. And so I think the more we get, has it ever passed for middle school? Is that something we need to go to the legislature on, requiring it at the middle school level?
It usually works its way into the legislative sessions every year, and then nothing happens with it. So there is no requirement at middle school, no.
Well, it's so important. I told the legislators, I watched them as they got up and went in and out and went in and out, and we expect these babies to sit there for 6 hours a day and not do anything. And the other thing is something we really need to work on is they only get 20 minutes. And by the time they go in there and they start talking, then they piddle and they paddle. I think that's an issue of why they don't feel like they're getting full, because they really don't have enough time. So it's something else we really do have to work on at lunchtime, because the little ones are up and down and doing all kinds of things. But we're going to have to put that on our agenda for the middle school, because it is really crucial, and it really makes me happy when I go outside and see the kids out there running around having a good time. And,
me too.
Yeah. I thank you all for your work. You're doing wonderful things. In the nutrition department, I hear just wonderful things about, and getting all the awards. And it's hard work, and we appreciate that, because it is about the kids and try to get them healthy. So thank you all for the work you do.
Thank you all for your support.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I have just a couple questions. First, I echo the thanks. This is really important work. I want to ask Dr. Winch, we had the opportunity to work together some years back on the Healthy Schools project, those magnets, and when I look at, and it's slide number 6, if you could bring it up again, the PEP, I can't remember what it stands for, but
Physical education program.
physical education program schools, the obesity reduction that's reported is just off the charts. I mean, it's a 20-something% reduction in obesity.
6%.
Well,
6%.
from 26
Yeah.
to 20% of the kids are obese. That's more than a 20% reduction in number of the kids from the different perspective. But that's far better. And if I don't want you to go through chapter and verse, but what's the magic here? Or do we know enough to think that's a sustainable drop? I mean, what's really working?
Well, one of the things that we decided was working was the extra assessments that the grant required us to do. And so all the HPSE schools now are going to a 4-time-a-year walk-run assessment and BMI assessment too, I suppose. But it's not just the assessments, it's the goal setting and checking on, where the kids are during and before and after the assessments that, in my mind, really makes a difference.
So more of an integrated approach of assessment and action, kind of?
I think that's one component. Maybe Bonnie would like to talk to what else she thinks.
Well, I agree with everything that Bev said. I think it's more of a concentrated effort, and it's a reminder to the students all the time about the physical activity. Regarding the assessment, they're doing it more. It's the same thing as people going out and doing the Triple Crown. You're practicing, you're working on it, you're understanding what your body can do and how it can become more efficient, and then setting goals for yourself. We had a parent that contacted me and had done a testimonial video. It didn't work out for tonight, but one of the things that she said her child does now is she set goals for herself for cross country, but she looked at those goals and then came home to her mother and said, well, I can set these goals for my academic achievement too. So that goal setting piece is so very important for anybody, even a child as opposed to an adult too.
Well, that's really an added benefit from the the discipline aspect of this. I just I really applaud this because I don't know how you would quantify, but if you could make that a lifelong impact of that kind of reduction, that kind of creation of wellness, years added to lives, and certainly millions and millions and millions of healthcare dollars saved over time. That's a very important activity. Couple of other questions, and I think this is the first time the first time board members have heard this sort of report. Is there an overall kind of state of the student's health report that exists sort of so that we could have a background on kind of what's the baseline against which you're working to try to improve? Is there any kind of a comprehensive audit of health or anything like that?
We're working with the Coalition for Youth right now. I know Bev has pulled some data related to that in BMI as far as for the whole district of students. That data is pulled from the physical exam that's required at initial entry and 6th grade level. So other than that, I don't know that we have anything overall for the whole district other than that BMI data.
Well, but we do have the HPSE reports.
Yes.
For the schools. It's 17,000 students.
But we don't have a kind of an overall view of the health of our students. Kind of, I'm not proposing it. I'm just curious. And do we have the ability to compare our progress in these graphs to other districts? Have we done any kind of how are we doing compared to others, or best practices work? I know there's a ton of interaction on both the nutrition and physical activity side, but in terms of the kind of reporting we can look at, is there any benchmarking sorts of stuff?
Well, there's lots of national data, as I'm sure you know, about obesity rates of kids across the nation.
Right.
We could certainly compare ourselves to that. And I know when the HPSE data has been analyzed before, what they typically find is that not that the kids are reducing their obesity level so much, but they're not increasing it at the same rate as other kids across the nation. But But yes, there are national benchmarks that we could certainly
But there are
compare
no
ourselves
like
to.
other school districts, because I mean I have the impression that JCPS is progressive and kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of this work, but I don't really have any hard comparison data to compare that to.
Mhm.
So
There are other districts and states that have health report cards for their kids, and I think that they include things like BMI. I don't know how we would get access to that, but within Kentucky, I don't believe there's anything like that available.
Well, I guess only last point, I really applaud what you're doing, including the work to control portion sizes. I think, one of the challenges for all of us is we've gotten used to such, ample portion sizes. It's a part of our social life, the way we relate to each other, and teaching kids what it's like to be full enough without overfull is a wonderful thing for the for the schools to take the lead on. So thanks for all your work.
And I think along those lines, the Y5210 has done a really good job with that as far as reinforcing, and I should have said that earlier too, as far as what's been happening to change the data. We even had a meeting at the Y a couple weeks ago, and some of the students had written down and drew pictures of, I used to eat a large bag of potato chips, now I eat a small bag, I get a small bag, but don't eat them all. So they're learning about that control and moderation.
That's really important. And I think the little drawings that were circulated up here would be good to show to the camera because they clearly get the 5210 and what it means. So.
Thank you so much. Wonderful job, and thank you for all that you do. Is there a motion to accept the report, please? Mr. Jones, second. Mr. Brady, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Our next item is a discussion item, the report on NAEP, National Assessment of Educational Progress, Trial, Urban District Assessment, 2013 Reading and Math Results. Dr. Harkins?
Actually, Bob is going to present the NAEP results.
Chairperson Porter, board members, Dr. Argans, I'm very pleased to be here tonight to report on our National Assessment of Education Progress results. Basically, this test was given to our students last January and February. We basically got our results in November for public release, and this was really our first opportunity to report this data to you. As I go into this, basically there are two things to keep in mind. One is that our results, when compared to 2011, the last time that we administered the NAEP to our students, our results are very similar to what we scored in 2011. But we also this time included in our sample of students tested more exceptional child education students, ECE students, and more English language learners. And we were asked to do that by both the federal government and by our commissioner, who happens to be on the NAEP National Governing Board. So anyway, so let's very quickly go through this. So what is NAEP? It's a test that's been going on since 1969. It's been given at different time intervals over the last decade. Over about the last 16 years, it's been given about every other year. It's usually in reading and math. Every once in a while, they do science and social studies or something else. It was originally designed to measure our progress as a nation, then it went to region, then it went to state, and then back in 2003, it basically went down to the district level. We are called a trial urban district. This began in 2002. It was really to help help look at large urban districts and basically see how large urban districts were progressing similar to the state. And in 2013, we were one of 21 districts that volunteered to do the reading and math assessment. These are the 21 districts across the country. It started with 6 districts in 2002. We actually were invited to join in 2009, and we did, and this is our 3rd administration of the test. So how were we selected? Well, if you had to be a district in a city of over 250,000 people or more, you had to have a sufficient student population to be able to support a sampling of 3 subjects if they wanted to do that in grades 4 and 8. And you had to have a majority of students that were either African American or Hispanic, or a majority of students that were eligible for the free and reduced lunch program. And like I said, we volunteered. Basically, this past year, we tested 1,600 kids in 4th grade reading and in 4th grade math, and 1,400 kids in 8th grade reading and 8th grade math. And basically, what happens is the federal government actually does the sampling, and they do the administration of the test, and they come out to the school, and as kids come into the room that like the kids that are sampled, one will get a math test, one will get a reading test. We don't know which test the kids get until they show up at the classroom there. From my point of view, it's really good because there's really not that much burden on the schools for us to get this data. So what were the results? This graph basically shows all the cities, and basically, if you look, there is there are either arrows or like diamonds. The diamonds basically means that there was no change from 2011. We were one of 11 districts that basically had no change in any of the data in reading and math in either grades 4 or like grades 8. Some districts did improve in one grade level or 2. Some went down. The 2 districts that had the biggest gain were Chicago in 4th grade math, and the District of Columbia had gains all across the board. But when you look at their results compared to us, they were significantly like below us, and they are playing catch up. I said that we included more students in this administration of the test than we did in years past. There is a goal by the federal government to have 95% of the original sample tested, okay, the original sample that the feds draw. And this is the first year that out of the 3 administrations where we hit that 95% goal in all subject areas and in all grade, in reading and math in both 4th and 8th grade. If you look at students with disabilities and with English language learners, the goal there is to sample 85%. Get 85% of the kids sampled to take the test. We didn't quite make it with students and disabilities in grades 4 and 8, but you can see that we did significantly improve on what we did in 2011, and you will see in 8th grade math we did hit the goal of 85%. If you look at English language learners, you will see once again, like, we didn't quite hit it in reading, but we did hit it in math in grades, in both grades 4 and 8. So how did we do? Like, I want to look at 3 sets of scores in reading and in math. Average scale scores, the percent at or above basic, and the percent at or above proficient. Here is once again, like all the school districts. You will see that Jefferson County in like 4th grade reading had a scale score of 221. That middle column with either the green or the the pink or the other color. If it's a arrow that's pointing to the right, that means that these school districts significantly scored higher than Jefferson County, and X means the district scored the same as Jefferson County statistically. And in the pink with the arrow going to the left, that means that the district scored significantly less than Jefferson County. And so you will see that that we scored higher than 15 districts in the large cities in both grades 4 and 8, and like you will see in grades 4 that of the school districts, only Hillsborough, Charlotte, and Miami-Dade basically were higher than us on a scale score, but Miami-Dade basically scored the same as us statistically. So there were only 2 districts statistically higher than us in fourth grade reading. In 8th grade reading, you will see that once again it was Hillsborough and Charlotte, and Austin scored the same as us. I put the Kentucky score in there, and I also put the national public in there. I want to point out that Kentucky's results were released in October, and their results were very similar to ours, basically no change from 2011. If you look at gap data, you will see that that we do have a gap issue on our results in both 4th grade and in 8th grade between whites and African Americans and Hispanics, and you can see what the gaps are. These are very similar to the gaps that were reported in 2011. You will see that our African American results are very similar in 4th grade to large city and to African Americans across the country in public schools. Our white scores are higher than those 2 areas, and our Hispanic scores are higher than large city and national public. If you go to grade 8, though, you will see that our white scores are lower than national public and large city, along with our African American scores, and our Hispanic scores are basically the same as large city and national public. Scoring at or above basic, the NAEP basically has 4 scoring areas. You are either below basic or at basic, or you are like proficient or like above proficient, and so this is at or above basic, and you will see where we are, starting with the lower percentages on the left and like moving to the right. If you look, this is the first time that we could look at our results, and the table at the bottom is basically our 4th graders and what they scored in 2009. They were 8th graders this past year, so you will see that we gained 5 points in that particular cohort for the percent at or above basic. The large cities gained 14, and the state of Kentucky gained 8 on the same cohort to basically give you a perspective. If you look at scoring at or above proficient in reading, I want to point out this was our score for K-Prep in 4th grade reading and in 8th grade reading, percent proficient and distinguished. We scored 44 and 42 in 4th and 8th grade. You will see that in 2013 we scored at 33 and like 29%, like on the NAEP test, and you can see what we did in earlier years. One of the things about the new Common Core test in Kentucky was to try to get results more aligned with the NAEP testing, and if I would have shown you this table 2 years ago, our K-Prep scores would have been around the 70th percentile. So the new Common Core test and the new scaling of it basically has brought the 2 scores closer together. Yes.
The question is JCPS moving in the right direction? I don't understand what the answer is from those
Okay,
charts.
well, on this, on this, as far as NAEP goes, since we've been in it, we went up 5 points, but then we went down 2 points. So we've gained 3 percentage points in the 3 administrations that we've had. But remember, we are also including more kids that were excluded in the testing in like previous years. So in answer to your question, Mr. Jones, I think we are moving in the right direction. We have more kids that weren't participating in the testing that are more challenging, and yet our results are sort of in the ballpark and at least moving up from like the first year.
And Bob, would you explain what NAEP considers proficient, a score of proficient to be?
I'm going to show you in a second. Okay, I think you were reading. Okay, sometimes people think that I ask you to ask questions to set me up. Okay, so anyways, so let me. I'll show you what it means in a little bit. Okay. So let's look. So what does this mean for like reading? Here's a typical item. The new Common Core talks about text-based reading and answering questions from the text. If you would read this paragraph about the little great white shark, there's actually a question then about what happens and what the word means about like accidentally. We had 76% of our fourth graders answer this question right. The national average was 81%, and we scored higher than 16 school districts. We have the capability of basically looking at this data, at like released items, and like Suzanne Wright accompanied me at a training session, and like we have access to this item analysis to see what our students know and what our students don't. In answer to your question, Mrs. Duncan, you will see that here is, 238 is basically the proficient scale score, and basically if you look at reading like in grade 4, as you go up the line to get to proficient, you got to recognize the meaning of descriptive word use in an expository passage. You got to recognize the author's main purpose for writing an expository passage. You got to recognize the best description of a character based on action described in the expository passage. We scored 221, so our kids sort of are comfortable with those things. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to recognize description dialogue explicitly stated in the story, and we still have to work on that to get up to proficient. I hope that it helped answer the question for you. And that was in grade 4. In grade 8, here's another question. Once again, when the plane lands, what does Miguel notice outside the window? And there's this thing that the answer comes from the text. 65% of our kids answered this correctly. The national average was 67%, and we outperformed kids in 13 other TUDA districts. And once again, now at 8th grade, to get to proficient, you got to be able to recognize the meaning of the word as used in the story. You got to recognize explicitly stated fact from an expository passage. You got to use information from the expository passage to support evaluation of a description. And you got to recognize relevant detail embedded in a story. Those last two, our kids are still struggling on, okay, on average. So that's where we have to work. These are our next steps that we're trying to do. We're trying to collect and review the data on the student responses from the NAEP website. We're looking for trends in student misconceptions, and we're comparing the NAEP responses with student misconceptions that identified in our district assessments. We're working with the language arts specialists to identify components in our curriculum units and supporting materials that can be emphasized to eliminate gaps and misconceptions. And we're going to use the NAEP released items to support our district assessments. So that's what we're doing in reading. If we go to math, we didn't do as well in math as we did in reading. You will see that we scored higher than eight districts in grade 4 and higher than 10 districts in grade 8. And we were lower than both national public and large cities in grades 4 and 8 as far as our scale score goes. Our gap scores, once again, are very similar to what we saw in reading and in both grade 4 and grade 8. When you look at the percent scoring at or above basic, we are more to the left than we were in reading, and as a result, we didn't do as well when compared to the other districts. When you look at the cohort stuff at the bottom of the page, our grade 4, we had 72% scoring at or above basic. In grade 4 in 2009, we only had 61% this past year in grade 8, and that was a drop of 11 points. I want to point out there was a drop in the large cities of 7 points, and in Kentucky, a drop of 10 points. So there's something going on, and we have to, we really do have to look at the alignment of what's being taught in math. Like this sort of came up with the high school math stuff, if you remember. Once again, here it is. We've made small progress in the 4th grade math on the NAEP, and we've made progress also in 8th grade, although it was the same from 2011, and you will see how that compares with K-Prep. If you look at the item analysis, the item on the left, the find the perimeter, okay? From what I understand from our math people, this is really a 3rd grade Common Core standard, finding the perimeter. And so our 3rd graders learned how to do this, but our 4th graders either forgot or didn't get it as 3rd graders, because we only had 38% of our 4th graders correctly answering this. 43% chose answer A, which was just adding the 6 plus the 8, and they didn't go all the way around. They only went halfway around. And so that tells us that there's a misconception there that we got to figure out how to correct as we deliver instruction. The national average was 64% for the students getting this. So you can see how much of a difference there was between our kids' performance on this one item and what it was in the nation. The item on the right in 4th grade, the answer is 1,800, and we had 66% of the students answer that one right. The national average was 75%, and we only scored higher than 6 districts, and this is sort of an order of operations item. Once again, this sort of tells you where we have to get to get proficient. One of the things is determine the sum of numbers represented on a number line, and that's one of the standards that's above where our kids score in terms of getting to proficient, and then using place value to find the sum. If you look at the 8th grade items, when I calculated this before, I think the answer is 28, and we had 70% of our 8th graders correctly answer this. The national average was 75%, and we outperformed 11 tutor districts. And once again, you can see that we need to learn how to compute with data from graphs to solve problems and use ratios to describe situations in context. These are our next steps, very similar to what we're doing in reading. And with that, I'll take any questions. So I'm sorry I went so fast, but
that's okay. Questions? Nope. Ms. Duncan?
The only thing I have read that there is a score, and 90% is what NAEP uses to call somebody proficient.
Well, actually, NAEP NAEP really hasn't had that much movement in proficient across the country. Like if you look at the national report card, okay, like the nation's report card, I'm not sure your statement about the 90% is basically, technically right. I know that they have a lot of technicians. I joke that NAEP is the federal government's like effort to keep measurement people in the workforce, okay, because they do a lot of analysis and a lot of, like equating of, the 2009 test with the 2011 with the 2013. I think that what they try to do is they use the normal ways to determine proficient, but I don't know if 90% is really technically accurate. Like I'll try to find like the methodology on how they set proficient, and I'll get that to you. Okay.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I think my summary of this is it's discouraging. Nationwide, the big cities are sort of making no progress, and we're moving a little bit here and a little bit there. And probably the biggest worry that seems to jump out is that Kentucky has created a new test that does not correlate with this. Even if it's closer than before, it's still, the way we measure ourselves in the state appears to be about a third higher than this allegedly globally normed kind of a thing. But I'm not supposed to be a testing expert. I don't think that's the role of any of us on the board. I think the question I would ask, and maybe it should go to Dr. Hargens, but what do you do with this information? What's the, what do you really take away? Because just because somebody has a new data set on top of the other data sets doesn't mean we should feel good or bad, really. What do we do with this information?
Well, when we got into this, okay, this program started in 2002, and there were business leaders in the community that heard about this and were asking, why can't Jefferson County be part of this? Because at the time, there were 50 states with 50 different standards, okay, and sets of standards. So we jumped at getting into it in 2009, and just the idea of here's a test that's sort of an independent test. That's a very rigorous test that's been done for a long time, that we can compare with other large districts. We could compare with the state. We can even take our results out of the state and compare Jefferson County with Kentucky without us. So like that was an advantage. As we move into core content, okay, and the other states, everybody right now, like Kentucky's sort of ahead of the curve, but everybody still has their own set of tests, and they still are, they're still struggling, I think, with, how do you bring core content into the classroom? And yes, this is sort of discouraging, but this is really after one initial year of core content. So I'm looking at these results in 2013 as more of a baseline year for us in Kentucky in terms of our implementing of core content. Am I discouraged? Well, I'm not happy that we didn't improve. I want to see those arrows going up. Okay, I don't want to see diamonds.
Right.
Okay, I want to see arrows going up. And so yes, so I was a little discouraged. But there are little gems in here that you don't know about. For instance, Austin, Texas. They were always ahead of us. Well, they aren't now in reading. Mm-hmm. Okay, they are behind us in fourth grade, the same as us in eighth grade. I love it personally.
Is it because they got worse or we got better?
Well, they may have
happier
gotten
with
worse.
one.
They may have gotten worse, and one of the things might be because Texas doesn't have core content. Okay, and I'm just saying these are the things that that we have to sort of look at. Austin has the same opportunity as us to use this data set to look at their curriculum, and I assume that that's what they will be doing. And but what we want to do is, like the state, like we had the commissioner here, and I had a brief discussion with him, very very brief. He's on the National Assessment Governing Board, and that's a big deal thing. I mean really, and I and he also, I think that he would say that he would have liked to have seen improvement in Kentucky. Like we talked about similar results, but one of the things that we're proud about, one of the things that might be holding us back in terms of these results are, we have this accommodation rule on our state test. The NAEP people will not recognize our accommodation rules. So when they sample a kid that needs an accommodation, our school people are looking at regulations that say you shouldn't test this kid because they need an accommodation, but NAEP wants us to do it. So we have this sort of tug, pulling and tugging and saying, come on, let the kid try it. Let the kid try it. I was a proponent of trying to have the accommodations rule changed to be the NAEP rule that would be basically in almost all 50 states, and it almost passed and it didn't pass. Okay, and from what I understand, nobody wants to touch it again. Okay, trying to get it changed, and that's the way it goes. So we have to live with
So that's
that.
one reason why they might be different.
Yeah, so that's one reason why the K-Prep score might be different than our NAEP score. But for us to include more kids that were excluded last time in our testing and basically get the same results, I think is a district moving in the right direction.
And the most helpful thing that I saw is the item analysis, is because you can get and have groups of teachers think or talk through why did that many kids miss perimeter. So I think it also just gives you information, were our kids able to answer it, and relative to other kids in the nation. So when you get to that level of item analysis, I think that's helpful and a catalyst for discussion. So,
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radosky. Is there a motion to receive this report? Ms. Duncan, second. Ms. Westland, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We now have a report on updating professional learning communities.
and I actually think this is perfect, because I think the question that the other data suggests is, what are we going to do about this? And these great people are here to answer that question.
Before you start, thank you so much for being here. I know that many of you have been in the classroom today and in the school, so thank you for being here. And I had the wonderful opportunity to come in a little early as you prepared, so thank you for all the work that you have put into your presentation. Dr. Hensley.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. These are remarkable people and colleagues that I have and teachers that we have with us today to talk about a real adaptive change inside our school district. Not a technical change, a very adaptive change that's about the way we do things. That truly is a response to the NAEP data. It truly is a response to our need to improve achievement for each child in our schools. So we're going to be talking about professional learning communities. Over a year ago, I said to you that one of our big rocks, one of those things that we needed to lift and move, was professional learning communities, that our ability to put that structure in place to make it so that it's not PLCs or something you do, PLCs are something you become. And over again across our district, because of the great work of teachers and the great work of leaders, instructional leaders and goal clarity coaches and principals inside buildings, we're seeing a great shift in our district in how teachers collaborate together around the needs of each individual child. We've been able to begin that large shift from all children to each child, to creating professional learning communities that develop plans, that look at data, that look at student work, where teachers get the opportunity to grow together so that they can address the learning needs of our students. So they can look at the NAEP data, they can look at our K-Prep data, they can look at their own formative assessments and make informed decisions about what they can do with kids on a daily and weekly basis to move each child forward. I'm very excited to have some colleagues with me here to talk about professional learning communities. I will ask them to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Shara Lattimore, the Director of Computer Education Support.
Karen Branham, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction.
Hi, I'm Deb Rivera, the Principal at Field Elementary.
Lauren Morgan, Goal Clarity Coach at Field Elementary.
So, as I've said before, it's long been my belief that cohorts of teachers turn schools around. That great leaders pull together cohorts of teachers and get them about the same things, so that they're about the right strategies, the right positive, collaborative skills that move an entire school forward. So I'm going to ask Karen Branham to talk about where this connects to our entire strategic plan.
So goal number 3 of the district's strategic plan addresses that parents, community, and partners are involved to enhance the educational experiences of our students. Specifically, Strategy 3.7 addresses the need to build capacity for PLCs so that we as a district, as schools, and as teams of teachers own student achievement for all students. Also in goal number 4 of the strategic plan, this addresses schools that are safe, resourced, and equipped to address student needs. Strategy 4.10 addresses the need for a system that enables classroom teachers as well as school leadership to work together in professional learning communities. During the 2012-13 school year, we were charged with the task of implementing professional learning communities across the district so that teams of teachers could come together during common planning time to plan and implement standards-based instruction, to address student learning and analyze results, to make adjustments in classroom instruction based on that data, and to provide necessary interventions and enrichments for students based on their own individual learning.
So back that year and a half ago, I challenged principals and challenged schools and our instructional leadership to take that step into professional learning communities. But in reality, we had already started a lot of that work, some of it under the leadership of Dr. Lynn Wheat, who did some wonderful things to help us move forward in professional learning communities. One of the things that we were able to make happen was while we went with professional development and we brought the DeFores in to talk to all principals, or as many as we could get in a room, we decided to choose a small group of elementary schools and middle schools to serve as a pilot to work directly with the DeFores. And Becky and Richard DeFore are really the parents of the professional learning community movement. They're the founders of Solution Tree, and they've done a lot of work, a lot of research. Their work has been researched over and over and over again, and there are places, entire countries, that have adopted professional learning communities because of that strong research backing. So we looked at a number of schools, elementary schools and middle schools, and we've shared that data with you. And actually in your packet you have much more than this singular slide. You have a study, the entire study, and a lot of the information and findings that came out of that work. But the DeFores work in mathematics with those 13 schools led to some tremendous gains. Out of the 10 elementary schools that participated in this project, 90% of them, 9, showed substantial improvement. Of the 3 middle schools that worked in this project, 2 of the 3 showed tremendous improvement. So we realized that we needed to expand this work and begin to move forward with the Goal Clarity coaches in schools. We had the perfect structure with elementary schools having Goal Clarity coaches and now assistant principals. We have a structure in place where professional learning communities can strive, where they can really thrive and grow and deepen in the culture. So we have started phase 2 of professional learning communities to expand and refine that work. And I'll ask Karen Branham to discuss that.
So using the positive data from the DO4 PLC pilot schools, we designed our plan for phase 2 of PLC. In our second year of district-wide PLC implementation, we want to note that the DO4 PLC pilot schools still continue to be involved in that pilot project. In addition, this year we have over 70 Title I schools that are participating in phase 2 of our PLC implementation. And in this project, we're providing intentional professional development to support principals in these schools and Goal Clarity coaches. The training that we're providing includes face-to-face PD sessions with principals and Goal Clarity coaches from national experts on PLCs, as well as small group virtual sessions for the principals that will take place in groups of 5 or 6 with one PLC coach from Solution Tree. Our goal is to build the capacity in these principals and Goal Clarity coaches to effectively lead and facilitate the PLC process in their schools so that we have similar results to the DO4 PLC pilot schools that we witnessed last year.
And we have brought with us our rock star third grade teacher team back here who you're going to hear from in a few minutes. And they have put in a very long day, so thank you guys so much. I'm very, very honored to call them colleagues.
I think when you look at the PLC cycle and you look at the collaboration that's involved, the third grade teachers that are here tonight, when you hear from them, you'll see that one of the things we do is we always look at what do we want to have happen at the end of this. So we plan backwards. And part of that planning backwards is, as you've already heard tonight, you don't do a PLC. You don't have a PLC. You are a professional learning community. And as such, you look at what you're going to guarantee your students are going to learn as a team. And how are we going to know if they've learned it? Well, we have to start with an assessment. So we're planning backwards because we know where we want to go at the end of this cycle. We use a pre-assessment and we look at the data to see have our students really learned what we need them to learn or have they not? And then we plan accordingly from there. We look at our core math instruction, which is taught by our homeroom teachers, and then we look at what is unique to the PLC schools are what we call WIN, what I need time. All of our students, K through 5 at Field, get a second math period every day that is taught in a group that's based purely on what the data says they need. If we're working on a specific strategy and we have a group of students who've mastered that already, one of the Common Core standards, then we'll provide enrichment to those students. If we have students who are beginning to master it but not at a level of mastery that we're happy with, then we will go ahead and provide more instruction. And if we have students who really have not even begun to achieve mastery, we will teach them in smaller groups to ensure that they reach the mastery that we need for them to achieve. I think when you look at this third grade team, the collaborative effort that they put in is unbelievable. They not only now commonly plan for math, they commonly plan for their English language arts block, for science and social studies. They are planning backwards for everything and looking at what they need to start with, whether it's specific to the math emphasis that we have at Field or not.
Okay, and part of what we've learned with our work with the DO4s is that a critical component of a successful PLC is leadership within the school, and we refer to it as simultaneously loose and tight leadership. And what I mean by that is that principles of effective PLCs really promote autonomy with their teachers, but they're also vigilant, no-nonsense protectors of the school's vision and values. So they can be loose on certain strategies, like how their teachers advance the vision and the values, but they remain passionately tight on the fact that the vision and values have to be adhered to. And our 2012-13 K-Prep scores indicated that Field was a high progress school, which we were very proud of. PLCs have enabled our school to achieve improvement in the top 10% of the state. And this slide shows some of the highlights of our K-Prep scores. We did have the largest overall gain in the district, the 6th highest gain of all elementary schools in the state. Went from the 13th percentile to the 78th percentile. Had highest gains in science and language mechanics of all elementary schools, and 12th highest gains in reading and writing for all JCPS schools. So even though we did focus on math, really the process of the PLC carried over into all content areas. And finally, teacher collaboration and a focus on the essential questions of PLCs have led to some really positive impacts on the culture of our school. We've shifted from thinking about my kids in my classroom to our kids in the school, a shift from teaching to learning. What are the kids actually getting from what we've taught them? A change from infrequent summative assessments at the end of learning to those frequent formative assessments throughout the process of learning so we can adjust instruction. And finally, we've changed from assessing many things infrequently to assessing just a few things frequently. And with that, we do have a video clip of some PLCs in action, so enjoy.
With that said, now we have a group of teachers up here who are going to say a little bit more about the process. We have our current third grade team, Ms. Lockhart, Ms. June, and Ms. Reed, and Ms. Lancaster, who is now a first grade teacher but was a member of the third grade team last year.
What do we expect our students to learn? Just as preschoolers are taught to brush their teeth each day to ensure proper dental hygiene throughout their lifetime, the 8 mathematical practices are introduced at the kindergarten level and continue to be a center of focus every year thereafter. Whether a student is in first grade, fourth grade, 11th grade, he or she must make sense of a problem, persevere, attend to precision, and so on to ensure proficiency in math that will last a lifetime. These 8 mathematical practices are constant and applicable to all ages. Equally as important to the mathematical practices is the use of the Common Core standards to drive instruction. Unlike the constancy of the practices, the standards are scaffolded, diving deeper each year as students progress. The standards are put into student-friendly terms, commonly known as the I can statements. The I cans foster an I can mindset. I can, so I will. While all of the standards are taught throughout each cycle, a set few are guaranteed as determined by a team of teachers. Once determined, the I can statements are posted in the classroom so that the students can see them. Also posted are the 8 mathematical practices. So all of these combine the instilling of the mathematical practice even at a very young age, using Common Core standards to drive instruction, and putting standards into student-friendly terms lead to an increased number of students who are proficient or distinguished in math.
How do we know if they have learned it? Our formative and summative assessments had an overwhelmingly positive effect on student learning and achievement. We have used 2 important district resources, SITS and Cascade, in our assessment construction. These tools have enabled teachers to gain insight into students' thinking and adjust instruction accordingly. An important component of assessing student learning is helping students analyze their errors on the assessments. By involving students in their learning, we have helped change students' mindsets about who they are as young mathematicians. Students are involved in error recognition, and our conversation is more student-centered. As a result, many students have progressed from novice to consistently proficient and/or distinguished performers. The primary reason for increased student learning, our students know they can be successful.
How do we respond if they have not learned it? We take our data and place students in small groups based on what they need. Students get instruction in specific areas they haven't mastered. We search out materials and resources and make modifications so that students are given differentiated instruction. Throughout the process, students may move to other groups, again, based on what they need. So a student who is novice in one standard may be distinguished in another. Students are in different groups every week. The impact of our WIN groups and the PLC process on student achievement is phenomenal. I'm a fairly new teacher, and what I've learned is that as a new teacher alone, I can be effective, but teaching with this process, we are powerful. The precious gift that comes from that power is the impact on student achievement, and our data proves it.
How do we respond when students do learn it? Data is the driving force behind our PLC. It allows us to provide enrichment and extension activities to those who have reached mastery. All groups are fluid, meaning students move within different groups weekly based on their instructional need. As students reach mastery, they may move into an enrichment group, as well as sometimes move down from time to time. And this is because their needs fluctuate as they move from standard to standard. This is why this time is called WIN, or What I Need. Extensions and enrichment activities are wonderful because they help us push students who are ready go beyond our core grade level instruction.
Thank you all so much tonight. If you have any questions from this team of teachers, for this team of teachers before we move.
Ms. Haddad.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting to hear. We've been hearing about it, and I'm going to go visit some schools to see how it really operates. My concern has always been in elementary that you're generalist, that you're supposed to, unless some schools departmentalize. But how do you know so much about everything? I mean, that just fascinates me, because you do have to teach everything to all kids, unless they are, like, you just teach math or you just teach science. So it's harder at elementary. I've talked to a lot of teachers. Talk to me about that.
Well, I'm an old instructional coach, so I just kind of take on that hat at that point in time. But what I do is there's some really good resources out there, teacher-friendly resources, and one of those is Engage New York. And I go into Engage New York. I also use Georgia Learning Units, and Georgia Learning Units are really powerful because what they do is they break down the unit that's being taught by the mathematical practice. And so we use JCPS resources as well. But I will bring in the content standard to teachers, and we will then oftentimes go in and look at Learn Zillion videos so we can see how it's being applied, to figure out what are misconceptions, because everybody's working on Common Core and they're all working on Math Common Core. So and I know other districts are working on it, and oftentimes other districts will come up with what are the misconceptions on it. And then we talk about those misconceptions. And then I give tasks to the other, homework to the other teachers to come up with ways to solve those misconceptions that we think that students are going to have, to find a strategy. And then they come back and they share that strategy to the group. And then we have a binder of strategies that we can go to find. And what happens is they become even more versed than I am with the standard, and they'll correct me when I'm wrong. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah, that's good. Anybody else want to add anything?
Mine was just fairly simple. I just love being in the classroom, and there are things that I may not, a topic I may not know, but I'm the first to say, come on, kids, let's, go find out about that.
Mm-hmm.
And if, in preparing my lessons, if I try to teach each day or prepare each day as if I were having a substitute. Like, I want them, to just, and so if I don't know it, I go find it and I learn about it. So.
Very good. Sounds very exciting.
But, I think that's why we're all in the classroom, because we do have that thirst for knowledge. And
we have 3 big tubs, and in those tubs are binders, and those binders are broken up by the standards. And so all the resources for those standards are in those packets. And so we pull those out, and we're constantly adding. But we also have a wiki space, and so wiki space is really powerful because all the grades are on there, and so I put everything we create into the wiki space. We have a wiki space from last year, and we're building it on this year, so it's really transparent. We can go into that old file cabinet that we created from last year and then revise it for this year. You can see if you go in, Mona told us, and we didn't believe her, our DeFore person, oh, you're going to redo everything next year. And we're like, no, we're not. We have no, we're not. We already made it. We already did the work. We're just going to do the same thing. She goes, no, you're not. And no, we're not. We have to constantly go back and revise because our students actually, and this is the power of the PLC, our students this year are so flexible with math. And we got our proficiency on 11/16. We got our 80%. Each PLC has to come up with a goal, a SMART goal, and we put ours at 80%, proficient or distinguished. We got ours this year at 11/16, and we've been rolling through at 80%. We rolled into fractions, which is harder than heck. We had 73.7 proficient or distinguished, 7 points away from the 80. And we're not finished teaching fractions. That was the beginning of fractions. We did not, last year, get our 80% till the end of February. But that is a result of the PLC being scaffolded amongst the grade levels. Next year, our proficiency was 11/16. I think our proficiency is going to be 9/16 because all the grades are working together, and that's the power.
Yeah, thank you. It's so exciting just to watch you and listen to you as you talk, and it takes away from just being in a classroom by yourself and how you learn from each other just like the kids do. So thank you.
Yeah, artists think of themselves, teachers think of themselves as artists in the classroom. Long time ago, it's the misconception. And really, you can still be an artist in the classroom. You're just creating a collage.
Very good.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thanks. Thank you all for being here, and sorry you had to wait so late. I'm glad you got to take in a board meeting, 2 whole hours before you got to come up here and tell us the best stories of the night. So anyway, thank you all for sticking with us. Sounds like you've really got it going on, and you figured it out, and sounds like, and I'm sure every day isn't smooth, but it sounds like you have a process that goes pretty smoothly. Whether you have challenges with kids or not, you know what to do. And I know not every school certainly has really developed PLCs yet, and I've heard that often there are concerns about how you fit everything in, from planning individually and then planning and meeting as a PLC. What would each of you, just real quick, say to teachers who might be skeptical or haven't really done it yet, how it works for you, how to make it work, don't be afraid of it, or whatever? What would you say to bring everybody along to see some of the successes that you're seeing?
I would certainly just say, the data proves that it works. It is hard. It is time consuming. I felt like we were married. I mean, we laugh because there's a set group of teachers, and it's becoming larger, that stay later and later and later. But when you see those results, it's worth it. It's what we're committed to.
It's more than just the data, because behind that data is a student, and those students, I can give an example of a student, the 2 students that I had last year. They were consistently in those low performing WIN groups. They were just struggling with those standards, and but they were working hard, getting more confident. We had a math proficiency assessment, and both of them scored 100%. So what happens is it's not just that score, it's that confidence and the belief in themselves that they can carry that on, and they take that beyond. That's not just 3rd grade or 2nd grade. They take that on to the next year and the next year and the next year. So,
as well as other subjects.
And I will say, the resources that you have provided us, you don't realize how it's going to impact the classroom or who's going to take it on. I attended the Rick Stiggins in the convention center, 10,000, 100 slides. And it was long, but then I thought about it, his message of internalizing for growth mindset and Carol Dweck and everything. And one of the things I do in my classroom is when we have an assessment, the students actually go in and set the benchmarks. What's going to be a distinguished, a proficient, an apprentice, a novice. And they are so hard on themselves. They will say you can only miss 1 to get a distinguished. And I'm like, really? Really? That's, let's look at this question. Really? Give yourself a little bit more room. And, they learn to give themselves more room. What happens is afterwards they set goals. And there was research that was done that if 2 groups, if you put a group of students in a room and you let them sit before a test, and then there was another group of students that talked about their fears about the test, and then they gave each other high fives. And I used that research because that researcher said you would get 2 gain points from that, 2 grade level points. And my kids get 2 grade level points. They go in, they talk about it, they set their goals. They are like racehorses coming out. Can we start? Can we start? Hold tight, hold tight. And then they go in and they take that assessment. And like you, I have novice students at the beginning of the year who get proficient and distinguished consistently. And so the resources that you provided as a district, that wouldn't have happened had I not been a participant of it, of the Rick Stiggins PD.
Ms. Duncan.
I am so proud of you all and so happy that you came and shared this, because we need to know that it works. We read all these things, but we need to know that this works, and you have certainly demonstrated how this works. My question is, do you do this after school, or do you do this during the school day that you...
No, we just do it in school.
I mean, as far as even with the kids, too. This is all for them. It's all done during the school day. So it's not like extended school for them. No. See, I love that. To me, that's what we really need to be doing, using the time that we have with kids to get these kinds of issues settled. But you all stay afterwards. I know you do, and I'm sure that those are tremendous work sessions.
And this team in particular, I am new to field. I am new to JCPS this year. This team works so collaboratively that one teacher takes the lead for their science, another teacher takes the lead for their social studies. And as their gains have shown, they collaborate all day on everything. And just because we're a pilot school that focuses on math, the ownership that they have across the board in all subjects is unbelievable. If we could get all teams to work the way this team works, we would see unbelievable growth everywhere.
Wow.
And certainly, the balance has shifted with the experienced 3rd grade teacher and the newer 3rd grade teachers to where everybody knows how to fish for everything that they're looking for now. And they equally share the responsibilities.
And they were second grade teachers. You should talk about the change into third grade.
It was a huge leap for the kids.
The kids have to, on some standards, they actually take a leap. One of the standards is the 3MD1. It's a elapsed time. In second grade, they come off just telling time to the nearest 5 minutes, and then they roll into third grade, and it's called elapsed time, but really what it is algebra. And they're always, and that's a huge cognitive, it's a jump into it. And another one is the addition and subtraction with going up to 1,000. Regrouping. Another gap.
Ms. Westland, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think you had something else you wanted to say.
I would say we're not afraid to beg, borrow, or steal, as the case may be. I think we look for every resource we can find, and whether it be in our building, whether it be on our wiki space or somebody else's wiki space or another district or whatever we can find out there, I think we spend so much time planning because we're planning starting with the end result, which is the Common Core standards. And we don't have a basal reading series. We don't have a math series that gets us from point A to point B.
Yeah. And I really don't think that even if you purchased one for us, it wouldn't suffice, because what's happening is you're having kids actually meeting Common Core standards because the rigor is increasing. So teachers have to synthesize. They have to make sense of the content. A long time ago when I went to school, the teacher would never, our professors would never let us get lesson plan and just do it. We would have to find other sources to make it better. And that's what we've had to do. And when you're doing that, you're differentiating to meet student need.
And for me, ultimately, it became a lot of more hands-on, which they just love. You know, I'm the type person, I have to drive it myself to know the direction the next time I go, and that's what I find with my kids. They just love those hands-on games that you make, and they're just so more active participants, which really makes them retain it in the long run.
What you all are talking a lot about as students, they're setting their goals, they're getting involved, so it's really student-driven too. We don't just sit there and tell them what to do, and they tell you what they want to do.
That's one of the mathematical practices, is that the students become authority.
They construct viable arguments.
Well, and they have more time to interact with each other, which is such a powerful learning tool. You know, a lot of times I can say it in teacher jargon, but hearing a kid say, no, you just do it this way. Oh, okay. And then they understand it. So you know, that just provides more time for that student-student interaction where the teacher is more the facilitator.
And that's a big shift, especially for our higher performing upper elementary students, because it used to be okay for them to say, well, the answer is X. Well, how did you get it? Well, I know. Okay, that's great. How did you get it? And getting them to really talk the talk and be able to explain and come up with different approaches really sometimes is harder for our higher performing students.
Well, they've only had 1 year of Common Core.
It's such a mental shift for them.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. The passion that you have at 9:30 at night is just exciting.
But I would say you would want to encourage all schools, and I think you should vote on it for all schools to do it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I do want to particularly say that I heard your principal speak at a meeting, and she was asked to talk about how you made such significant gains. And she complimented the staff, but she also said that if anybody comes to me with something that's not a part of the plan to move us forward, I say, we don't want to know about it. So obviously you are shining stars, and thank you so much for being here tonight. And I know we're going to have another little piece about the PLC rounds, but thank you for your energy and your passion for our students.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. I was called up to talk about the PLC rounds, and what the PLC rounds is something we've opened up to the community to see exactly what those extraordinary teachers are doing. So the community is now, and it's in your packet there, the community is now encouraged to come to the PLC rounds and see exactly what's going on. Why? Because we understand that it's very important to be, I think Chair Member Westland's resolution was the glass is half full. This is a positive resolution on speaking of the positive things that JCPS is doing. So these students can, so these stakeholders and community leaders can speak of and see what's going on in the PLC rounds. I have Tess McNair up here and Dr. Shelley Thomas. Dr. Shelley Thomas has probably been to about 1,000 PLC rounds, and Tess has been to 3 or 4. But what I wanted them to talk about, and I always ask Dr. Thomas, who's done a lot of stuff with us through U of L, to talk about it from 2 lenses, because she's also a parent of ours whose child goes to Brandeis. So Dr. Thomas goes in and looks at it as a parent, but then she also works in the College of Ed and does a lot of work with Jefferson County Public Schools, and she can talk more about it. And Tess is just probably, she asked me to bring pom-poms, but Tess is probably the PLC cheerleader, and she always tells other people to come see the PLC round. So what I wanted to do was to fortify the work as far as community upliftment and engagement, is to make sure community members can get inside the schools and see exactly what it is. Because it's easy for us to sit and talk about PLC rounds, but once you see them, if you ever really saw these teachers do their thing, it actually does change what you think is going on. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to first Tess and then Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas, as you can see, is a little not herself, but she still came because she's a big JCPS supporter and believes in the PLCs. So,
okay, can you all hear me? Thanks for listening to us tonight. I feel like I'm going to fall far short of the passion those teachers exhibited, but as a community stakeholder, this was an incredible experience. I've gone back several times to visit PLCs because as someone who works in education from a funding perspective, but also just spends a lot of time thinking about how our schools can improve, I was woefully underinformed about what's actually happening in schools. I don't have a child in schools, and I hadn't been in one since I was there learning myself. So my view was outdated and pretty inaccurate in terms of what was going on in the classroom. And I'll just be brief and say that I took away 3 things from the experience of visiting the PLCs in different, in elementary schools and high schools. I haven't been to middle schools, but I'm sure John will get me there. But anyway, I took away 3 things, and I guess my background is I come from a corporate environment, and I'm used to places where people collaborate a lot, and that's what happens, and doors are open, and we're in cubicles and big open, pens of people, and collaboration happens over walls very easily. And I had this view of education that it was teachers locked in rooms with the doors closed, and it was just them to fend for themselves against kids. And maybe that's how it used to be, but that's not what's happening in JCPS, and I didn't know that. What I saw was 3 things that I think were really powerful for me. One was the collaboration among teachers and the best practice sharing. In the PLCs, I saw them building camaraderie as these teachers, they were like this great team. I wanted to be one of them. And they were exploring new methodologies and sharing things, this didn't work really well for me, but what do you all do? And then somebody had a great idea, and then something cross-pollinated, and suddenly they had this amazing, best practice that they were sharing among themselves. And I thought that was really powerful. There was also a peer coaching and peer development aspect to it that was not threatening. It wasn't like, oh, you're bad at this, or oh, let me send you to this thing. It was, we're in this together, and all boats rise when we talk about these things and share. And I loved that. The second thing was the active use of data at the student level. I know we have lots of data in this district. I've known that for a long time. I didn't know how deeply it went down in the district to like the front line, where a teacher could look at, this is how Jimmy is doing today, and they would look at that in a team, and they would figure out what's the intervention he needs right now, and which one of us is best suited to deliver it, because I might have a better relationship with him than John does, and so maybe I should be working with Jimmy on this, or maybe John has a better relationship with Susie, and so he should tackle that win time that they call it. And so I loved the way that it was data and individualization, and it was real stuff. I think the third thing I took away was the dialogue that I saw happening was action-oriented, and teachers were taking ownership. It wasn't, so-and-so needs to do this. It was, we need to do this with this student. And there was a definitive action plan that everybody walked away with clarity on who owned it. And you knew that in another day or 2 days or whatever, they were going to get back together and talk about that very point once again and see how far they'd moved. And so, I think the PLC rounds that John's been organizing are so powerful because here I was working in education and I thought I knew what was going on and I didn't. Now I have a better sense of it. But they're a real valuable opportunity for community members at any level to get into a school and feel like schools are accessible and like they can understand with transparency what's really happening in JCPS and how things are changing and are different here. And as I think about the potential for this, as you talk about moving it beyond the pilot phase that it's in, I think these PLCs are this incredible mechanism, a delivery mechanism for innovation and for getting teachers involved in it. And so, that's all I have.
And
to be
Dr.
brief.
Thomas, of course, like I said, she is a parent, a very active parent, but she's also very active in fortifying the work of JCPS because she's down at the College of Ed and has done a lot of work through the College of Ed to work with JCPS.
And she matched the passion.
And I'll also add that I'm a very honest parent. One of the things that happened when I moved back to Louisville and I had a choice of which district we were going to move into, I chose JCPS for my children to attend JCPS schools. Now that said, being a parent has kind of upped my expectations quite a bit. So I have higher expectations of the schools for my own students as well as for students who are other people's children, who are children who don't look like mine, who don't speak English as a first language like mine do, who don't have all the access and opportunities that my children have. And so that lens as a parent is how I've gone into these PLC rounds and how I'm going to speak to you tonight, but also as a teacher educator. So when I was invited to attend the PLC rounds by Mr. Marshall, I brought along pre-service students. So I brought along my students who are studying to be teachers. And as a result of them observing these PLC rounds, observing teachers talking about data, talking about kids, we've been able to make important theory-practice connections. We've been able to show pre-service teachers what it looks like in the classroom when you think very specifically about students learning, what that looks like. And so importantly, our pre-service students are ready to step in as student teachers and as first-year teachers as active members of their own PLCs. But what I'd also like to talk about is observations I have from the PLCs as where I would like the PLCs to go from my lens as both a teacher, educator, and researcher, and as a parent, and also as a community member with a social justice perspective. I'll also offer my suggestions for what frontline educators need from us, frankly, from leadership, from community members, and from university educators. And I encourage all of us to take responsibility for whatever role we have in the process. The faculty and staff in the JCPS schools where I attended the PLC rounds are excited about our children, and they're very excited about their learning, and they want the community to observe this excitement. And I think you heard that very clearly from the field elementary teachers. And I'll say that this has been very consistent. I've been in the elementary, middle, and high school PLCs, and it's just as infectious in those high school PLCs as it is in the elementary, as it sounds in the elementary schools. I also noticed that students are very engaged in meaningful and important work, and that teachers are using evidence, which you saw really clearly in that video, to understand students' learning and achievement and to make determinations about their students' needs. They're reflecting on student learning based on the assumption, and this is a critical assumption, that all students can learn and it is their duty to facilitate that learning, and that learning has to happen for all students. All of this intellectual work is foregrounded by deep, authentic, caring relationships. And that's one of the things I don't think that has been stressed enough in those reports, is you have to understand, I think you caught that, but I want to be real explicit about it, the deep, caring relationship that those field teachers and the other teachers have for their students. What PLCs need from leadership, families, and the community is, first of all, a framework that challenges the deficit perspectives about particular students and their families that's so pervasive in schools and in our society. We have got to foreground these conversations with real attention to deficit perspectives and avoiding those perspectives. A trust in their capacities as learners, specifically as adult learners. And adult learners look very different from adolescent learners. They have to be respected as professionals, and they need opportunities to process information and to own the process. They need support in very specific terms, and those terms are time and resources, and including the tools that teachers need. And I believe the field teachers also do a really good job of talking specifically about the tools they use. And so we have to think about some of the decisions district-wide about those tools and what makes sense when a teacher knows for a fact that a particular tool will not work for a particular student and another tool might work better. That those blanket decisions cannot impede those teachers' ability to affect student learning. We need autonomy for these teachers that is balanced with high expectations from and accountability to both parents and caregivers. We need to provide encouragement to enable the PLC members to be rigorous and critical and to incorporate often difficult feedback in meaningful ways. Think about what it takes to sit in a learning community, oftentimes in a public place, and get feedback. And the data they report isn't always great. It's not always great. And we have to create spaces where they can look at that data and get feedback on their own instruction that they can then incorporate that won't be punitive. And I also want to add that we need to foreground these PLCs with the sense that they must move beyond standards-driven curriculum in order to meet the needs of culturally diverse students in a 21st century democratic society. And what I'm saying here is the standards should be the minimum for instructional content rather than the entirety of it. That we need to include more than the standards in our discussions of PLCs. And finally, as we saw with this group of teachers, we need to develop their leadership. I know my students describe it. Not all PLCs are as functional or as productive. We need to work with those PLCs to help them become more well-developed and to help them become more effective, more efficacious. And so we need to develop their leadership, groups like the PLCs that I've observed around the district, so that they're helping one another and they're supporting one another through this very intellectually engaging and imperative instructional process. So, thank you.
In closing, and I don't know if Dr. Hensley wants to come back up, the next PLC round is at Camera, January 23rd. 2:30 to 3:30. Dr. Lynn Wheat, the lady that wears 1,000 hats, will actually be with me to facilitate that. We, I think, already have like 20 people signed up to be at that PLC round. Last little tidbit of information as far as how many people have we reached. 310 different people have seen PLC rounds. Over 75 organizations that we work with have come to see the PLC rounds. So it is getting out there, and you can ask certain people that have been, and they can all speak to it. Not as, I don't know about as well as Tess, but they can all speak to it. So I'll hand it back over to you, Dewey, or thank you, if there's not any questions on the rounds.
Very briefly, I'd just like to say thanks to Field Elementary and to my great team. Karen Branham and Suzanne Wright have done a great deal in the professional development and the professional learning to move this forward. We aren't there yet. We've got a lot of teams that have to be developed more. We have schools where they have to go through the hard work of collaboration. But we can do that, and who benefits most are the children, our kids. Our kids benefit when a group of talented teachers come together around their needs. And the more we can continue to saturate our district and grow this idea of professional learning communities, the more we can name and claim each kid, so that each kid has an affiliation, each kid has their needs met by the great, great teachers we have in our school district. So thank you all very much for hearing our presentation today.
Thank you, Dr. Hensley. Is there a motion to receive this report. Ms. Haddad, I'm sorry, did you have a...
Yeah, I wanted to thank Tess and Dr. Long for their enthusiasm also. And it's good for them to get into the schools, and I appreciate it, and they can spread the word. But Tess was as excited as they were. That was really good. Right?
Yes,
so was Dr. Long.
I talked to Tess.
She was. I said, yeah, she was excited too.
I talked to Tess shortly after her first visit on instructional rounds. I had to calm her down a little bit. She was so excited.
It's great, though.
And John Marshall.
Yeah.
John Marshall has done great work in bringing the community in to see how this works.
That's wonderful.
This is more than just an educational initiative.
Right.
I mean, it is larger than that in how people work together around something important.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion by Ms. Haddad, second. Mr. Jones, all those in favor? Everyone voted yes. Mr. Brady's out of the room right now, but it was unanimous except for Mr. Brady, who's not in the room. Thank you so much. Are there any suggestions or additions that you would like Dr. Hargens to make to the agenda planning calendar 2013-14? Ms. Duncan.
The only thing it struck me, we're having that magnet review in March, and maybe we need to have that on there, so we'll get the formal results in the meeting.
I spoke with Dr. Hargens about that today, so thank you for bringing it up, because currently it's on the calendar for February, but the contract says that they will be visiting in February, so she's agreed that they will move that. Any other suggestions for the planning calendar? Is there a motion to receive the planning calendar? Ms. Haddad, second. Ms. Westland, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Mr. Brady has not returned yet, so thank you. Moving on, board reports and requests, and we do have 3 speakers if they're still here tonight, so as quickly as we can, if we could do the board reports and requests. Are there any? Ms. Duncan.
I have a request on, I'd love to have the implementation dates for each school that is implementing the cell phone policy, because I'd like to see how long it takes them to get all that in so they can implement. And as far as a report, I'll be in Frankfurt Saturday with KSBA, the Executive Director Search Committee, and we will begin our search for a new Executive Director of KSBA.
Okay. Anyone else? Real quickly, I would like to acknowledge that JCTA had their Martin Luther King dinner Saturday at Hotel Louisville, and they recognized students at all levels, starting with the 6th grader who did the Martin Luther King speech very eloquently. So I'd like to just give a special shout out to JCTA and to the students that were there and their parents. It was very well received, so thank you for your hard work. I also wanted to take a moment to thank my colleagues for giving me this opportunity to serve as the chair. As it's possible for this board to do great work, I'm as excited as the teachers were tonight. And what we know is that great people who are focused will do great work, and we all have individual strengths that we bring to this board, and that we, as working together, will be very powerful. So I thank you for this opportunity to work together as we go into 2014. I also wanted to say thank you. We have talked about the sound in this room for several months, and as you can see tonight, we can hear better. We don't have to shout, and I want to thank staff that has listened to us and have made the adjustments for what we're doing in here so that we can better hear. So thank you very much. We do appreciate it. So having said that, I would like to move on. Are there any other comments before we go to the speakers? Okay, our first speaker is Andrea O'Connor. Andrea O'Connor. Our next speaker is Deborah Rose. Miss Rose, thank you so much for being here tonight. I apologize for the lateness of the evening, but thank you for being with us. You will have 3 minutes. At the end of 2.5 minutes, the bell will sound once, and when you get to 3 minutes, it will sound twice, which means your time is up. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I'll try and be quick. It's late. I know everyone wants to go home. I'm here to talk about the bomb threat that was at Bloom right before break. I feel that it was not handled appropriately. I feel the board needs to look into this. I had sent a letter to both Mr. Jones and the superintendent, and I never received any response, or I never saw a response either from the principal or vice principal. In addition, I don't understand why we're not using modern technology, the cell phone texting, the emailing, the One Call Now system. We've used it for weather reports last year, and it was used successfully this year for our water main break on January 8th. In addition, we received a letter that sent home that said car riders and walkers were diverted due to street closures. Not exactly all true. I dropped my child off at 8:40, and he was allowed in the building. When I found out from the text and called the school to find out what happened at 10:12, the assistant principal said everything was clear at 8:30. If that's so, why were students diverted later on? I'd like this investigated. I'd like to know the answers. In addition to that, I also had talked to Angela Nichols, and I had expressed my concerns, and she said, quote, Mr. Jacobs, who is the vice principal at Bloom, will discuss the texting communication at the next SBDM meeting to ensure a consistent plan is in place. I do not feel that it is up to the schools to decide this. I believe that Bloom is excellent educators and do a good job of teaching my children how to read and write and math. I do not believe that they are security experts or crisis management experts. I believe that this needs to be addressed at the district level, and I believe that we need to have a plan implemented. I would like to know how this is going to be handled in the future for all schools. My child and children are not going to remain at Bloom, and I'd like to know what the district is planning to do for future possible threats. So, with that said, I am appreciative of your time, and I understand that there was a miscommunication that happened because Angela also informed me, because the text that came out was extremely unprofessional and allowed more stress and worrisomeness to the parents. So there needs to be some sort of crisis, something set up. So when you call the school, you're talking to somebody who handles this and not interrupting the administrators who are trying to calm people down and continue on with their day. I hope I can get answers in a timely manner because I feel as though the board and district have ignored me. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and the process is we refer it to Dr. Hargens for a response directly to the parent. If not Dr. Hargens, she appoints a staff person that will get back with you.
What is it? What is a
Someone will
reasonable?
call you tomorrow.
Great. Would you like the copy of the letter I sent you?
I'm absolutely. I'm sure that we have it, and we'll find out what happened.
I have a copy if you'd like one tonight.
I'd like one because I don't have one.
Unfortunately, the date when I sent it is not correct, and that's the day I printed it last week.
Thank you.
And I have one extra copy for you guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Naomi Delinka. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. This is also about expressing concern about emergency procedures during the bomb threat at Bloom. I really would like to make some suggestions so that maybe if there's another crisis in the future, things go more smoothly than they did that day. The first and singular one-call message was not sent out until 10:12 a.m. And that was after the situation was resolved, and it read as follows. Parents have received misinformation from numerous sources. The building is secure and has resumed all normal operations. As a parent, that did nothing to alleviate anxiety, it caused anxiety. It did not tell me what the situation was or how it was resolved. The on-call one now, or on-call, one call, didn't think it was that hard. The One Call Now notification system should be used to keep parents informed in real time before, during, and after a situation is resolved as a communication tool to enhance safety and prevent misinformation. It was used successfully, as was mentioned, during the water main break. I also believe that these issues should be handled by security experts or at least crisis management experts. Because again, I also had a very poor experience with response when I called to find out what the situation was and where my child was. The messages should still be concise, but I would ask for information such as a plan to divert students, an explanation of the situation, instructions to parents. Do you want us to stay away? Do you want us to call? And a simple all clear at the end of the process. The letter we received at the end of the day, which I believe you may have just been given a copy of, explained that the students were diverted as car riders and walkers. My daughter also was a car rider. The line started at 8:30 in the morning. At 8:32, my daughter walked in the building. Everything looked as normal, but yet when I turned around on Bardstown Road, I saw a police car pull into Lucia. So that leads me to believe that the situation was not completely cleared when my daughter was allowed to walk in the building. I know she was safe. I feel that I'm sure decisions were made that kept her safe, but by the same token, I would have liked the opportunity to have maybe taken her to the coffee shop until 9 o'clock when I was told the building was completely cleared. The school has two-way radios. I'm sorry, was that the end?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just wrap it up by saying I too would appreciate responses to my emails, which were also not responded to, and would like to know what could be done in the future to prevent this from happening again.
Thank you for being here. I apologize. Someone will get with you. Dr. Harkins and staff will absolutely get with you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize for the lateness of the evening. I'm going to ask one more time if Andrea O'Connor came back in the room. I just want to make sure that we did not miss her being here. Okay, so that concludes all the speakers for this evening. There is no reason to have an executive session. Motion to adjourn, Ms. Haddad. Second, Ms. Westland. All those in favor to adjourn? It's unanimous. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.